The council minister to order at this time. At this time, we take a reduction. As a reminder, all members of council are obligated to declare a conflict of interest or a pecuniary interest as per section 133 in the Westminster Charter regarding any item on the agenda. Declare.
Two, regarding the health advisory committee appointments, I'll have to not be partaking in that one.
And just for council's clarity, both Councilor Pelosi and Councilor Brown will exit their chairs, but they're not required to leave the room for this because they are affected by the decision. They can't listen to that decision.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 2 on the agenda. None noted. Item number 3, for direction from council regarding the approval of the agenda for today's meeting. Councilor Brown.
Move the agenda dated November 25th, 2019.
Seconder. Councilor Batcha. Any further questions before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Moving item agenda number 4, look for direction from council regarding the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Councilor Baker. Make that motion. Councilor Baker, would you like to make that motion for number 4?
I'll get with it here. That the regular council minutes dated November 5th, 2019 be approved.
Thank you. Seconder. Councilor Baker.
My apologies, I was thinking of something else.
Not a problem, Councilor. Thank you. Councilor Fagan seconded. Any further discussion from those minutes before I call for the question?
Just a question. If I may ask a question
Certainly.
on the statement before. In terms of the agenda, the way there's a couple of things written, the way the motion reads, I'm not sure if I should ask it now or when the report comes.
Can I defer that one to the written report comes,
Okay,
if that's all right?
thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I'll up to the city clerk. Is there any public presentations or acknowledgements this time? Item number 6.
No, your worship.
Thank you. Number 7 is public hearings that are scheduled for 2 p.m. So at 2 p.m. hour, we'll return back to public hearings for the bylaw. Moving on to item number 8, new business, and I see we'll go to the office of the city clerk. So, city manager.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council, to present the 8.2.1 Fire Master Plan Ontario City Clerk.
City clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. The item before you is the Fire Master Plan, and we have 3 recommendations that we'd like to put before council today. The first recommendation is that council accept the Fire Master Plan as a formal strategic planning document that will inform the development of the Lloydminster Fire Services in the coming years. The second recommendation we're putting forward is consideration a comprehensive implementation plan that takes into consideration ongoing budgetary considerations prior to the end of the first quarter of 2020. And the final recommendation is the council direct administration to add a 4th paid-on-call firefighter position to Lloydminster Fire Services staffing model. The issue is that the Fire Services Master Plan was developed by Dillon Consulting to help inform the strategic and operational development of the Lloydminster Fire Services in the coming years. With the recent changes to the structure and composition of Lloydminster Fire Service, administration noted the requirements for the development, and of a document that would help inform the future strategic and operational direction of the fire services in Lloydminster. The Fire Master Plan provides 34 recommendations to be implemented over time with the consideration given to budgetary impacts of those recommendations. The Fire Master Plan is recommending that Council provide immediate consideration to the following items. The Council accept the Fire Master Plan as a strategic planning document that will inform the development of the Lloydminster Fire Services in the coming years. A change of the fire services philosophy from primarily a reactive response to the 5 E's: education, economic incentives, enforcement, engineering, and emergency response. These changes will occur over time as strategic priorities outlined in the Fire Master Plan through the creation of new fire bylaws, policies to ensure the optimization of public education, fire prevention, and inspection programs. Firefighter to the duty crew, and then the addition of a 4th paid on-call firefighter to the duty crew. The addition of the paid on-call firefighter will ensure that the fire services meets the requirements set out in the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, standards to conduct extrication at fire scenes. The remaining council issues will be reviewed and implemented, ensuring responsibilities with the need to a strong and vibrant fire services focused on the 5 E's. Council's options are to accept the Fire Master Plan as a formal document, direct Fire Chief to bring back to Council for their consideration a comprehensive implementation plan, and to direct the administration to add the 4th paid on call. Council may also not adopt the recommendation set forth, but Council could direct administration to obtain further information and report back their findings. Government implications is that the Fire Master Plans includes recommendations for amendments to existing as well as the development of new governance documents. The budget implications are that the implementation of the 4th paid on-call position per shift will add 4 paid on-call positions to the fire service and will have approximately an addition of $520,000 to the fire service's annual budget. The Fire Master Plan and Community Risk Assessment's overall budget is $109,870 and expected to be on or slightly under budget. Back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, City Clerk. Council Baker, I'll entertain that question you had.
Thank you, Richard. There's really nothing wrong here, just the way plan. It's a very document in my mind for all I know about the fire business. Today, I'm not sure what we're doing under options, which method or which asking for would, firstly, would be option number 1. And it says, Council accept the Fire as a formal document that will inform the development of the Lloydminster Fire. It said will. And that bothers me, is it may reform? Because if this is a 10-year document, move along, and as the fire chief and deputies move forward with this plan and with council and senior administration, there will be time to change. So is this going to be reviewed on a regular basis when there's any changes made? Because to me, we're accepting this as a guiding principle rather than a formal document. Maybe I'm not interpreting formal document and guiding principle the same way, and I just wondered if that was the right wording when we said will.
Will means that it will happen someday. What we do is, with this, each recommendation that is a council recommendation within the operational plan will come back to council for approval, and those approvals will be based on the budgetary requirements or limitations at any given time.
Councilor.
Well, thank you, Worship, because for future councils, there'll be new people here probably, in 10 years, unless some of you are going to hang around. The question is, they have to be refreshed every time this would come to the table. And I think it's important that it be reviewed for the benefit of all the new people and remind the municipality is our guiding principles. And that's why I asked that, because it is a big document. But I must say, when you do read it, it takes a lot of work, but it is very, sounds very impressive. Whether we can meet and all the recommendations, that's another question down the road. Thank you.
Absolutely, Councillor. I think that you hit very good points, and I think that you're absolutely right. It is I would call it a living document that we'll move forward with council after council over a 10-year period, working through the administration, through the fire chief and the team of fire services to ensure that, again, taxpayers value what needs to be done to what the recommendations are and where we end up arriving at sometime in the future. I believe it's a good start, but you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people, the three motions that are being proposed will come.
Well, thank you for the explanation, because I think that's important for the future.
Councillor Diachak.
Yeah, again, it will inform the development of the fire services. It's not necessarily going to direct you to be it. It doesn't say that the formal strategic document, so it's just going to inform the plan. And I think so you can always have evidence and information that will inform your planning process. This is one of those sources. What that plan looks like at the end of the day is up to the board and the direction, I guess, of the fire department and the motion and as you're pointing out, the resources that are available. But it's just informal. It's not begun.
May I respond to that?
Certainly, Councillor.
Councillor Diachak's absolutely correct. What I worry about is sometimes people forget about that. And they say, well, it says here, and I don't have to say anymore. Thank you.
Point well taken, Councillor. Point well taken. I think that he had moved on to the next council and that this plan, once it's the that will be a guiding document, and truly a guiding document with a plan. And we'll see where the plan goes.
Thank you, Worship. Fire service comes with a lot of history, tradition, and this will formally change everything going forward that we're used to seeing both publicly and behind the scenes as everybody plans. It's going to take some time, like anything you do in a cultural shift, because that's basically what was being asked for in this time, is a total cultural shift in how our members actually deal with and be proactive on things. So I'm glad that it is a guiding document and that it's going to be placed on over a number of years. It's going to take a number of years. This is not something that the public knows this is going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen overnight. I mean, if we approve the additional staff person, that's very quickly. The rest of the time, it's a gargantuan amount of work that they're asking our fire services to do here, both the chief coming back to us with recommendations and then actually going back and implementing those within the crews. It's going to take some time, but it's a fairly brilliant document, I would say, as far as a strategic plan for how we're going to move it forward. And if we can move forward implementing some of these things, it's going to go very well, I think. I believe we have buy-in from our administration, from our chiefs and assistant chiefs, and right now the members who are looking for some guiding principles. And they're getting them. And so that gives everybody a sense of purpose, a sense of direction, and it's a good thing. Thank you.
Councillor Diachak.
Yeah, just one other thing, I guess, that I think, again, as everybody said, it's a pretty comprehensive document, and as you go through, it'd be pretty easy several times just threw my hands up and walked away, because, you know, a lot of the information in there is well beyond the scope of my knowledge and background or what firefighting does. What I can say, I guess, of my observation is that there's two parts that rely upon safety, and we're, you know, as we're on board is one of the recommendations. We're trying to balance the safety. People are taking care of us and keeping us safe. And so as we look at the recommendations, I think it's important to keep those pieces in mind, is that, you know, I think the public generally expects that, you know, they're going to be taken care of to a high level of support and resources to make sure they're safe. At the same token, it's our responsibility to ensure that the rules and regulations that ensure those firefighters that do that job, to keep us safe, need to be tended to as well. That all comes at a cost. And I think, there's so much information and detail and regulation, importantly, ultimately to provide that balance. We need several checkbooks, I think, to do this all in one fell swoop, and we probably don't have the manpower at this point to do it. But I think certainly what it does say is if you want to look at the gold standard, here it is, work your way towards it, and I think, there's enough information in it for several councils going forward to be able to find their way through that. But certainly, if anything, that one recommendation of the fourth member, that piece of information that we've learned more recently was news to me, and I think importantly, the public needs to be aware of that, and I think several people that I've talked to about it have said, what? You mean, there are safety elements. You can't risk people's lives to do this because there might be another fire, and we're not going to jeopardize, the lives because there are standards of safety that we need to adhere to. That's part of the liability process. So this is a good move. I think the information is good to sort of provide the overall arching plan and direction we want to go. I guess the choice is on council as to how fast and how far. And that's going to be dependent on resources we have available.
Thank you, Councillor Torres.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just as a general comment on the entire process and just where we are today, I think it's been a huge learning gap, I think, even for some of us that already served on council, because fire services was one that in our mind just ran itself, and there was a handful of issues that came up along the road. And it wasn't until we really got going on this fire services master plan that we really saw how many shortcomings that we had. I don't think it would be a secret for me to tell you that I didn't believe that that it was a great thing being the largest volunteer fire service per population around that anyone could name, and that moving to a more modern fire department with more members and really the plan that we've got on in here, and then with that as far as the standards and the ability to provide a higher level of service to people, I think is all to a benefit to the community. So I think that within this plan and within even the current year budget, we're doing a lot. We're making huge value to residents. Not so much the fire services, and we're merely allocating money that way, but we're really moving the needle on the level of service that people are receiving, and the quality of that service with the number of trained professionals who are able to do this on a daily basis and all hours of the day. And I just think that from where we started to where we are now, that the City of Lloydminster is in a much better position, and there's a lot more that's going to come within the implementation plan that has to money that has to fund activities, but I think in 5 or 6 light years ahead of where we were 5 or 6 years ago. So I think that we are moving in the right direction, and I really appreciate the preventative nature of this plan, and what we've learned don't happen because you've done all the education side correctly. So anyway, just in general, I'm really happy that as a council we put this on the agenda and got it going, and I'm happy to see it come all the way here, and now we're looking at higher levels of service. So that's all. It was all over the place.
I'd like to also echo the many comments of my fellow councillors. The individuals, our staff that got that information, and I think that the strategic plan, you need to know where you're going. If you don't have your Google Maps or your GPS, you're just wandering aimlessly out there. So this is very good. The one point I'd like to make is that there's no question that there's costs have increased. To bring that fourth man on call, you see how important it is. It is an extra $520,000 a year, but we have to remember with this largest volunteer firefighter organization, the amount of dollars that were saved over the last 10 or 15 years, and that can come into play. I know it doesn't do us so what it cost us, but we did have it very good for many years, and the volunteer fire department did a wonderful job.
Councilor Monroe shared with me, she was very supportive of the plan as well. She did add that she would like to see a hospital added under the community risk assessment list to ensure list, meaning that it is a building with compressed oxygen with people that are not able to readily get out, evacuate the building, things like that, just to ensure that when that community risk assessment is completed down the road, that we take the hospital into full account. I'm sure the nursing homes are there as well, but she did live at the hospital. So I don't think there's much that I can add from the comments already shared around the table. I think that we appreciate presented from administration to the consultant. Enlighten us. As we talked about it during the GPC, this has never been done in the fire department for the city of Westminster. So this is we're taking some, as they say, baby steps to move forward. We've already started the process with our composite fire department, and it will only get better. Again, as it was mentioned, that comes with a cost. We have many, many volunteers to thank for a number of years serving this community, and we want to thank their employers and their families, because that's his family and the employer that gives him the time off, or her the time off to attend to fire calls and training and things like that. I know that most firemen will tell you about how many birthdays they missed and different things like that from that perspective, because it is a huge commitment. So I do appreciate the firefighters of the past, and certainly support the firefighters today that have stepped up as well, because it's not an easy job, and it's one that I appreciate there's someone there to answer the call. With that, is there any further discussion or comments? Questions?
Your Worship, I just clarified that the dollars that for the fourth paid on call position is in the budget that is being presented later today, so it's not an addition to that, so just for your information.
Thank you very much. With that, I will look for direction if there's no further questions on 8.2.1. City Council. Councilor, nothing yet.
Move the council accept the fire master plan as the formal strategic planning document that will inform the development of the Lloydminster Fire Services in the coming years.
Thank you, Seconder. Councilor Torres. Any further discussion or debate before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Buckingham.
Move the council direct the fire chief to bring back to council for their consideration a comprehensive implementation plan that takes into consideration ongoing budgetary considerations in the first quarter of 2020.
Seconder? I'm just going to ask a question of administration based on this question. Is this a suitable amount of time with the recent changes of the fire service that we've experienced? Do we need to give them a little more time for that?
We believe at this time it is, and there'll be some ongoing work in the background going on anyways, but should we require further time, we will come back to council and report to that.
Okay, that answers great. Any further questions before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Buckingham.
Move the council direct administration to add a fourth paid to the Lloydminster Fire Services staffing.
Seconder, Councilor Baker. Any further discussion? Councilor.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question. Should there be a date attached to that? As far as when, as opposed to just saying?
As soon as possible.
I know that I realize it's budgeted but for the 2020 budget, but are we saying as of January 1st? Just what are we saying as far as when we're doing that?
That was the intention, was around the January 1st mark. By the time we're early December or late November now, by the time we advertised and did all the necessary work, we're probably looking at a January 1 time roughly in that area, so that's what we're targeting.
Yeah, and I assumed as much. I just didn't know if it should be reflected in the motion that we're not budgeting it into December of 2019, for example.
So perhaps a friendly amendment to add that date would be appropriate then? So for clarity's sake?
January 1st or sooner?
Yes.
Would that be what we're
I don't
shooting
know that we want more sooner,
for? Okay.
because that's what I'm asking. I don't want it budgeted to 2019, which is already done. We'd say
So January 1st?
starting no sooner than January 1st. Is that an acceptable amendment?
Okay. Councilor Baker, do you accept that as a friendly amendment as a seconder? Any other discussion before I call for the question? Not seeing any, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, City Clerk. Moving on to 8.2.2, City Manager.
Thank you, Worship. To present the Lloydminster District Health Advisory Committee appointments, I'll ask Doug Workman to present.
Super.
And just for procedural, let Council note that Councilor Torson has. The matter before you is the Lloydminster and District Health Advisory Committee appointments. The recommendation is that Council approve the appointment of Jonathan Torson, Stephanie Brown Monroe, Wendy Plandowski, and Paul Richet to the Lloydminster and District Health Advisory Committee for a 2-year term from December 2019 to December 2021. The Lloydminster District and Health Advisory Committee has requested Council appoint representatives to the committee for a 2-year term. The Lloydminster and District Health Advisory Committee is recommending Jonathan Torson, Stephanie Brown Monroe, Wendy Plandowski, appointed to the committee for a 2-year term. The administration is currently in the process of reviewing the procedure and developing a policy on board appointments. Past practice has been for the city to appoint members to some external committees, even though there are no legislative requirements to do so. The city will continue this process until the policy is in place. Jonathan Torson and Stephanie Brown Monroe, representation of the Lloydminster District Health and Advisory Committee shall be as community members, not as council members. The options are that council approve the appointments of those individuals, or council request administration bring back further information. This item is in alignment with the following strategic area: external communication and relationship building, assisting in the local community with board appointments, maintains a positive relationship with the local community boards. There is no city bylaw for this committee, so therefore there is no government implications. Great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, City Clerk. Questions or comments? Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. I think before we go too terribly much further on this, that we should probably recognize those that have served on this board in the past. There have been some very, very wonderful community members that have filled these seats with their terms ending now. So just a word of thanks to everybody who has served to this point.
Thank you. I will name those committee members for council and the public's. I'd like to thank Brian McCook, who served as the chair for a number of years, Rob Saunders as vice leader, and Todd Kirkpatrick have served that committee very well past their intended time frame. So it was a time to have an opportunity to refresh, and I appreciate those gentlemen stepping forward and carrying the voice of the committee to that group. And for everyone's information, that committee is a much larger committee. It also involves our rural neighbors, it involves the town of Vermilion, it involves the First Nation of Onion Lake. So there's a larger area. It's intended to bring a voice from the surrounding community and area that's served by the health services, not just the hospitals. Again, there's been hospital boards in the past. There's been different things. This was the creation back prior to 2010 is the information I have was able to obtain. So when the region was created, I understand from that perspective, this was one of the options that was created. There's new members being added, I believe, from our city and some other appointments being made to that committee. So I expect that there may be some change going on within the committee as it evolves. But in the same token, it's there as the option for the community to have a voice at the table, chatting with health providers, namely Saskatchewan Health Authority and Alberta Health Services. So I encourage the public to watch for meetings when those are announced, open houses, because I think health is an issue that affects every one of us at this table, but is not directly responsible to us at this table. But due to the nature of our bi-provincial nature, I'm learning very quickly that it always seems to rattle down to the bottom of the ladder anyways, and we end up dealing with this. So this is one of the times that it's great to have some people step forward that have indicated that they will be willing to serve for 2 years. I appreciate those members that have come forward as well. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any further, I will look for direction from council on 8.2.2. Councilor Baker.
Worship, I do have a question.
Okay.
it's not attached to the city. It just started out as, somebody go talk to these guys and see what we can do about health. That was sort of how it all started,
I believe it
10 years or
was,
so ago.
yeah, from the Prairie North Health Region, they would, I believe, if I've got the right terminology, to establish a group that was representative and has representatives from 2 RMs, like I say, the Onion Lake Cree First Nation, the RM of Vermilion and River, be appointed, as well as I believe there's general appointments by both of the MLAs. 2 people from each MLA has the ability to create a committee of 15 broad-based residents to give input to the health authority about questions and concerns in the community is the intention. So it's an advisory, and the city, as the city clerk outlined, we can't find anything in the records that says this is formed by the city, which I can appreciate. And they came back saying the city has the opportunity to have 4 appointments. For the appointments are 2 years in length with a maximum, the intention of the terms of reference is 3 consecutive reappointments. So it would serve up to 6 years, and then a new body would come on to represent.
Thank you, Rich. The reason I'm asking, we've got 15 people from different organizations. What about legal liability? Are they covered by anyone or anything?
So from my understanding, the committee is simply a committee giving advice, raising concerns, and sharing the information.
That's how it started. I just wondered.
Yeah, but it hasn't changed. No, the committee is not a legal entity. There's no legal responsibilities on that committee. People volunteer to sit on that committee, and it meets, again, at the call of the chair, is the way I understand the terms of reference today, and to provide information and inquiries. Rather than someone, if they're not sure who they contact, they would contact one of these members that are being proposed going forward, and they would hopefully bring it up and say, there's issues in the community with X around healthcare, access to the hospital, emergency services, long-term health care, all the issues that fall under the health umbrella, which is very large, as I found out. There's so many segments that fall under health. And to try and help connect the right people potentially, or raise the issue to a level that the community, that the health provider is aware that there is an issue in the community.
I guess there could be liable for something.
Absolutely.
And I don't have the background
No.
anymore to know what's going on.
I have to research this a great deal, and it tends to meet
Okay.
late, and that's, there is no, and now this might seem confusing, this board, as I just talked about, or council, that being its proposed health council, covers both sides of the border. Alberta Health Services has a totally different process that is totally removed from us. Because, they have an application process. It's just one of the narratives of, again, our bi-provincial nature and how this shakes out. But it was asked that they be appointed to represent the city, and that's why I brought it forward to administration, to the city clerk, and suggested, look for direction as to how this was best. He felt this was the best way to do it, and that's why we're going to get to a policy down the road on these very issues, because we get other requests as well.
The important thing is that they're not.
Any other questions?
For sure. Do we know who the other members are at this point? Or have they all been selected yet?
No, we don't. And I imagine once that committee, I believe there's a meeting planned into December, that was what was on the schedule. They will regroup, and there'll be some new people sitting at the tables, and the folks that have been at the table for a while, and they'll be looking at all sorts of things and getting some communications out to the community. Any other questions? I'll look for direction from council. Councilor Fagin.
The council approved the appointment of Jonathan Thorson, Stephanie Brown Monroe, Winnie Glandowski, and Paul Riche from December 2019 to December 2021.
Seconder, Councilor Dudchak. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Please join us, Councilor Carson. Now, 2 o'clock hour. We have reached the 2 o'clock hour. At this time, we will return back to 7.1. At this time, bylaw 27-29, Phase 3, Stage 1C, Land Use Bylaw 5-2016 Amendment. I would like to note, before we begin, that during a public hearing, we ask that you respect the views of everyone here and allow without interruption. Each person wishing to speak will have to make a presentation to council. If you wish to speak, please state your name for the record and whether you are in support of the proposed bylaw. When you are finished speaking, please remain at the front as council may wish to ask you questions. All discussions of council members, city staff, and delegations shall be directed to the chairperson. Any questions brought forward by the public which are not able to be addressed during this meeting will be done. Council will not debate this matter during this hearing, and the decision regarding whether or not to grant bylaw further readings will be dealt with following the public hearing. I declare the public hearing for bylaw 27-2019, Larson Grove, Phase 3, Stage 1C, amendment to the Land Use Bylaw 5-2016 open at 2:06 p.m. I would ask the city clerk to confirm whether or not the public hearing has been advertised in accordance with the applicable legislation and to summarize the purpose of this hearing.
Confirm that this public hearing has been advertised and notice has been provided in accordance with the applicable legislation. This public hearing was advertised in Radio Source on October 31st, November 7th, and November 14th of 2019. The purpose of this public hearing is for bylaw 27-2019, being a proposed amendment to the Land Use Bylaw 5-2016 for Larson Grove Phase 3, Stage 1C.
I will now call upon anyone wishing to speak who is opposed to the proposed bylaw. I will now ask if anyone wishes to speak in favor of the proposed. I will now call on anyone else who is affected by the proposed bylaw that wishes to speak. As no members of the public were in attendance to speak on the matter, I declare the public hearing for bylaw 27-2019 closed at 2:08 p.m. Returning back to the agenda, item number 8.2.3, City Manager.
Thank you, Worship. To present 8.2.3, new property tax exemptions for nonprofit organizations. I'll ask Scott Perry to come forward.
Worship and Council.
Good afternoon, Scott.
Subject matter is new property tax exemptions for nonprofit organizations. Our recommendation is that Council approve 2020 nonprofit property tax exemptions as outlined in Amendment A for a one-year period in accordance with the nonprofit organization property tax exemption policy. Administration seeks approval of the new 2020 nonprofit annual assessment roll. Council approved the nonprofit organization property tax exemption policy October 30th, 2017 regular council meeting to provide members of the council and administration with a framework for assessing tax exemption only nonprofit organizations. Administration advertised the September 30th, 2019 deadline in the local newspaper in accordance with the policy and received 5 new applications for exemption. Administration has reviewed the applications, conducted site visits, and determined that 4 applications fully meet the requirements of the nonprofit organization property tax exemption policy. The last application did not meet the criteria of CUPTR and will not be brought forward. Administration these new applications approved for only 1-year period so that they will be on the same schedule for reapplication as the exemptions that are approved in January 2018 tax year. There are currently 23 properties previously approved for exemptions in the 2020 tax year. They will be required to reapply for a property tax exemption September 2020 for 2021 tax year. Administration says contract exemptions and confirm that their nonprofit status remains intact and their property use has not changed. Option 1 for council is to approve the property tax exemption outlined in attachment A. Option 2 is that council approve the property tax exemption outlined in attachment A for a maximum of 3 years. This will allow the assessors to update the annual assessment roll, but will require these applicants to apply on a different cycle than the previous approved exemptions. Option 3, that council will instruct administration to bring back further information. Budget implications. A decision on these exemptions will have the assessment code updated on the assessment roll. Total taxes on the lease space of the commercial downtown office in 2018 is $4,313.53, including $33,54.66 in municipal taxes, $1,258.87 in educational taxes. Total tax for 2018 was $7,615.88, $5,092.86 in municipal, $25,23.02 in education levies. Decision on this exemption will allow administration to calculate an accurate mill rate to account for the additional exemption properties. I'll pass back to you, Your Worship, for any questions.
Thank you, Scott. Questions? Councillor Thorson.
The timing of the 1-year period versus a 3-year period. So everyone else, like the majority of those who are on the program, were approved kind of in one block. 1 year would have been 2 years ago. So then next year is their annual renewal date. And the idea here is if you put this group here on a 1 year, then they'll be on the same schedule. Is the rationale behind that just to ensure that, you know, we don't miss one of them if we're dealing with them all in a block, or why would we do it year cycle so that they don't have to do the application again?
That will be up to council. Our recommendation is 1 year, and it is to bring everybody on at the same renewal time. It's like last year, a couple we brought forward, we did it for a 2-year period. So that's the intent, is so that everyone's renewing at the same time. We only need to bring it forward to council at one time, except for the odd new one that comes up.
Okay, and then so practice for those other ones too. They were 2 years away from renewal, so to get them with the entire block, we did a 2-year period instead.
That's correct. The council has an option to do up to a maximum of 3 years. That was the practice in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, my concern is just with it being, if it's all by itself, that I don't want it to get missed when the renewal comes, but also, you know, there's some legwork that is required by the not-for-profit, and to ask them to do it again 2 years later is a use of their resources at the same time just to get that process going. At the end of the day, you know, if it falls within all the standards within our not-for-profit, like property tax exemption, I definitely think this is something that we should be doing. I'm just not sure whether I'm in favor of a 1-year period or a 3-year period. So somebody sway me one way or another.
Councillor Buckingham.
Oh, I'd love to try. I don't know if I'm going to win, however. I would argue that keeping that on this 1-year term, because I remember we did this for 2 or 3 properties last year, we gave them a 2-year term. Keeping it all in the same time frame, good. Less administrative work on our side for sure. Less chance of anybody being missed, because at the end of the day, the bottom line is, I would suggest that any of these nonprofits that have to do this is one nonprofit on the list. By one of them. And I would suggest that the time and effort put into redoing that next year is far less than the money they're going to save by doing it at all. They're going to save a lot more and have not that much work. Scott, how much work would you say goes into the process of filling out that application to make sure it's there?
The majority of it is just making sure that they have to show us their nonprofits. They have to show us in this situation their lease agreements, so we know that they're responsible for the taxes. And probably a couple hours, 2-3 hours for this type of property. I would suggest for this group in particular, it would be almost the same as changing the dates and sending it to us for next year.
Okay, so their benefit far outweighs the effort.
To hopefully sway even more is that from an administrator's perspective, the team at the city would be able to contact all the nonprofits, and I'd be feeling bad, and I'm sure it'd be remiss if they missed somebody because it was the odd year and it wasn't one of those things that got on a cycle. And as we know, if the bill comes, you deal with it. If it doesn't come, you might be good. And in this case, they would go 3 years, they would arrive, they would get notice from the city, and and say, it's that time again, it's been 3 years, this is when we're gonna do the paperwork and move forward, so that it's not an ongoing battle at our end as well as their end. So I hope that's enough to convince you, Councilor.
Sold! 3 years it is. That's fine. I just was making sure that it wasn't, it doesn't sound like it's overly burdensome on the not-for-profit itself. And I agree that the financial amount of whatever you would pay in taxes is going to be far higher than the soft cost of the applications. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councilor Baker?
Would you refresh my mind, please? The tax notice is in the name of the nonprofit organization, correct?
No. This situation.
That bothers me.
I'll let Scott answer that question, Councilor. It might relieve some of your concern.
In situation, they either own or occupy the property, their lease has to designate strictly that they're responsible to pay the taxes, which we have confirmed in their leases that they are responsible for taxes. So they meet all the criteria of the COPTER, and because of that, if their taxes weren't included, we would have to see something from their landlord stating that they're going to get the reduction in taxes is going to go to the nonprofit, not the property owner, which I think is what your concern is.
Well, we know people rent triple net or whatever.
Right.
I just want to make sure the credit gets to the nonprofits,
And I-
however you do it.
Yeah.
The other thing, Your Worship, I think it's important. We've all been part of nonprofit organizations, whether it's a service club or whatever. And they're not the most efficient when it comes to administration, because they're all the volunteers. The more you can keep them informed, the more often you can tell them, now guys, you gotta look after this. Don't beat up on them. They're the key to our community. You just gotta keep reminding them they gotta look after them. So if you do it every 2 years, they're gonna forget. If you don't, let's put it, not very professional, bug them on a regular basis to keep reminding them what they gotta do. They're gonna miss it. Some clubs will miss it if you don't keep them informed. That's all I can say. I've been on service clubs, you all have, I'm sure, and they all do this. Oh, hell, I never thought of that. We're unloading Christmas trees. Never thought of that. So, I'm on their side with this one, which is everything. Just make sure you keep them, and if it costs us $20 for a letter, send it out, because they do a lot more good than a little bit of money. They're gonna save a lot of that, that's all I can say.
I think Scott can answer exactly to the process, Councilor, but I think that is letter, telephone, and I think that's why we kind of grouped it together when we got that as administration brought forward to us in 2018 to try and lessen the load on the nonprofits, but at the same time, our team realizes they're going to work with it all the way through, because the challenge is it's an ongoing process annually. I like the 3 years, but I also know that the commitment has to be there from the administration to help work with our nonprofits, as you've indicated, because people do volunteer, and that's very much appreciated. And we don't want to leave anybody outside the loop if we can, and I have total faith in the administration that they're going to ensure that if you've been on the list, we're going to come back and talk to you. So I would continue to re-advertise on an annual basis, looking for anybody that we've missed, because we know, again, things change in the community, which is terrific. Anytime we see better supports in our community from our nonprofits, I think it's a huge investment on their part, and we need, as a city, to come along as part of it, and that's where we end up today. Yeah, hope that answers your question. Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Just to clarify, I think previous to October of 2017, these groups were being asked to do this yearly, were they not?
I can't speak back beyond 5 years, since how long I've been here, but we've been trying to get it approved for 3 year periods since I came on here. The only time we were asking for 1 or 2 is because we were trying to bring everybody. What we had was we're in front of council every single year with a group of property owners, and we're concerned with the missing of them as well. And so we brought in a new policy, and our hope is to get council to approve for 1 year terms. Next year we bring it forward. We got the entire list unless somebody new applies for it.
No, that's the point I was trying to make. I think the process has actually been cleaned up over the last couple of years to try and make it as simple on the nonprofits as possible. So it's the right direction.
Make that motion that council approve the 2020 nonprofit property tax exemption as outlined in attachment A, 2020 nonprofit property tax exemptions for a one-year period in accordance with the nonprofit organization property tax exemptions policy.
Second for Councillor Buckingham. Any further discussion? I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 8.3, Community Development Services, and 8.3.1, the City Manager.
Thank you, Worship, to present 8.3.1 2020 Family and Community Support Services Community Grant and Allocation. I'll ask Patrick Lancaster to come forward.
Good afternoon, Your Worship. Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon, Patrick.
So administration is looking for a decision on Community Support Services Advisory Committee in the amount of $420,000 as outlined in the attachment in your agenda package. As many of you are familiar, Family and Community Support Services is a partnership between municipalities in the province of Alberta, 80-20 funding relationship to provide preventative social service programs in our community. Every year we hold an annual call for applications, so local nonprofits can apply to seek funding that will support these preventative social service programs. And those applications are reviewed by our advisory committee, who then make recommendations which are brought here for approval. This year's call for applications began in August 21st, and ran until October 1st. The applications were reviewed by administration and passed on to our advisory committee, who met in November to discuss and make their recommendations. This year was unique in that we received $734,773 in asks. That's well over the allocated pot of $420,000 that we set aside for the grants. So the committee definitely had a tough time debating those numbers and coming up with some allocations for the programs. The applications are reviewed on different criteria. A matrix is provided to each member of the committee, who then looks at the applications based on how the grant application is put together, the use of volunteers, community need, as well as if it's preventative in nature. Once we bring those allocations to the committee table, other factors are taken into consideration based on past performances of the programs, how the expenses are allocated, and as well as community need. So we have, administration is recommending that council approve the $420,000 allocations as they're outlined in the attachment. However, an alternative option would be for council to direct administration to go back to the advisory committee and seek further discussion and new recommendations on funding provided. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Patrick. Questions? Comments? Councillor Craig.
I'll just comment, I've sat on that board for a number of years, and I know the due diligence that goes into that. Board members take it very seriously. They spend a couple hours, 2-3 hours reading on their own, and then back at a general meeting again. So I think it's very thorough, and I have full confidence in their recommendations.
I'd like to add to thank you, Patrick and his team, one that put this together. And I know they put a lot of background into it. There's a lot of application work on those that have submitted applications, but a lot of work in the background that the city staff administration does to ensure that the committee has the necessary information. Patrick did an excellent job chairing that committee, ensuring that they stayed on focus, on point, and move through the evening. Thank you very much, Patrick, for those efforts, and to Marie Pierre as well. Any other comments from anyone?
Thanks, Worship. Pardon me, I just think it's, looking over the list and the depth of the asks and the amounts is reflective of a general economic condition in need within our community, and it's unfortunate that we're not in a position to be able to support all of the asks. Certainly, as we've referenced in the past, every one of these organizations has volunteers that work very hard to support community members in need and the goals that are out there. And I think it's important to note that not receiving funding is not in any way meant to challenge the notion or the good work that's being done. Rather, we need to live with the resources and means that we have, and we want to continue to express our appreciation to those organizations who do the good work that they do. We're just not in a position to be able to support them with more than we're able to.
That's absolutely correct. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Following on Councillor Diatrach's comments, I think it's probably prudent to say that the Mayor and I had the opportunity to meet with the Minister of this portfolio, and that in this year's budget there was no cut to FCSS funding. Is there lots of talk in the world about other cuts that have been made, and this funding was held. So fortunately, even though you're correct, we couldn't help everybody and do that, at least there was no cut. This funding remains the same as it did a year ago. So that's a small win in a tough time. So that's good. And thanks to the Mayor for sitting in for me on this committee. It's something I hold pretty close to my heart, but I have to recuse myself from this one, and the Mayor had to sit in for me on that one. So thanks, Your Worship, for covering that for me.
My pleasure. Thanks, Councillor. I think that we appreciate the government. This was one area that government heard very clearly from communities, members of the community, and that we were concerned because taking those few dollars from those groups, because we know how hard it is for fundraising here and every day in the community. And, it just would have been that much more of a challenge to aid those, and throughout from young to old. I think that's how broad the number of groups that requested the service. It wasn't just for youth, it wasn't for young children, it wasn't for seniors. It was across the board, and this the group that I believe was selected, the monies that were allocated will give as good service to those in our community that are looking to be assisted or helped out. This stands a good test of time. We'll go again to battle next year again, but for this year we were able to hold that money in place through the government of Alberta. So appreciate that. Thank you for your. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Baker.
Your Worship, if I may, I'd like to refer to our colleague, Councillor Diachuk, and he often says, what are the deliverables? And they're all good organizations, but the folks that have to sit. One time in the past, I was involved with that committee, and I can tell you, it doesn't matter what decision you make, you wish you could have made the other one, because they all do good. But somewhere along the line, you got to say, they're all valuable, but what's the best value for your community? And how many people do you serve? And unfortunately, at the end of the day, sometimes committees are frowned upon because they don't make the right decision. All I can say is, for the volunteer group, and I don't even know who they are anymore, I salute them for taking the challenge of making the decisions, because it is very tough. And it's really tough when they're volunteer groups and non-profit organizations like you see today. So thank you, Patrick, for leading those folks and helping them through this tough times. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other comments? Not seeing any, I'll look for Council's direction on 8.3.
All right. The Council approved the 2020 Family and Community Support Services Grant Program allocation of $420,000 as follows, and in addition, the Council authorized the Family and Community Support Services Committee to reallocate any unused or return grant funds. Of course, this is hang on. All right, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Lloydminster Program Mentoring Makes a Difference, $50,000. Catholic Social Services Program Senior Connections, $32,000. Inclusion Lloydminster Program Inclusive Community Initiative, $7,500. The Libby Evans Center Inc. Community Education Program, $5,000. Lloydminster and Area Brain Injury Society Social Reintegration and Connections, $1,000. Lloydminster Area Drug Strategy for the Lloydminster Youth Council, $1,500. Woodminster Interval Home Society Family Violence and Prevention Program for $25,000. Woodminster Interval Home Society Program LCYC Outreach Program for $62,000. Woodminster Native Friendship Center Engaging Our People for $45,000. Woodminster Sexual Assault Services Sexual Abuse and Assault Education Program for $40,000. Midwest Family Connections for First Steps at $50,000. Midwest Family Connections on behalf of Woodminster Area Early Years Coalition for National Child Day Celebration, $1,500. Midwest Family Connections for Maternal Mental Health Initiative, $5,590. Residents in Recovery for Community Life Skills Program at $25,000. The Olive Tree Community Center for Outreach Worker at $50,000. Walking Through Grief Society for Walking Through Grief Support, $12,000. The Grace United Church on behalf of the Grace United Church Play School, the Fantastic Families Workshop Series for $1,500. And Snowflake House Respite Foundation 2020 Family Home Enhancement Program for $5,410.
Thank you, Councillor. Second, Councillor Dyke. Any further discussion or comments? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Patrick. Moving on to agenda item number 8.3.2, City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. To discuss 8.3.2 land exchange agreement, Husky in the city of Linden. I'll ask Dawn Stain to present.
Thank you, City Manager. Good afternoon. Land exchange agreement between Husky and the city of Lloydminster. I'm going to ask for an amendment to the resolution that council approved the city of Lloydminster entering into a land exchange agreement with Husky Midstream General Partnership and Husky Oil Operations Limited, and that the subject lands will form part of the land exchange agreement include from Husky Oil Operations Limited to Kodiak North, identified in Schedule A, City of Lloydminster lands 23.76 acre portion along the northern boundary of Northwest 1250, 28 west of 3 in the City of Lloydminster, and over Cemetery right away in northeast corner, Northwest 1259, 28 west of 3 in the City of Lloydminster, identified in the attached Schedule B1. 2.6 acre portion adjacent to Highway 17 in the River Britannia, identified in the attached Schedule B2. And 34.1 acre parcel along 59th Ave west of the Husky Midstream General Partnership Terminal in the City of Lloydminster, identified in the attached Schedule B. And the amendment I would like to include as well is that sign and seal all necessary documents. This was presented at the November 18th Governance and Priorities Committee meeting, and the administration provided information pertaining to the land exchange agreement between Husky Midstream General Partnership, Husky Oil Operations Limited, and the City of Lloydminster. The land exchange agreement will facilitate Husky with their pipeline expansion and in turn secure land for the City of Lloydminster that will provide for future expansion and operational lands located at the City of Lloydminster's Operations Center. Just as a note, the terms for completing the transaction are considered to be fair, reasonable, and reflective of market value, and have all been reviewed by our legal. The net difference on cash value for the lands and items council had asked administration to consider after GPC was contacting the family of the lands in the northeast corner of the city, the lands in the heart of Britannia. The city has had conversation with the legal firm that looked after the estate when that was provided, and we were given a contact. Administration has tried to contact the individual multiple times and has not been able to reach out to the family. In saying that, the city did have some obligations as part of the when that land was donated to the city back in 1994. One of those was to construct a park, and another one was to put up a commemorative memorial for the brick manufacturing building that was there prior. I think it was one of the first businesses in Winchester. From an administration perspective, we feel we can add a caveat to the lands that are going to be remaining there to ensure that those obligations are going to be met as that land gets developed in the future. So we'll tie that and ensure that's registered on title for future, whether the city develops that land or the developer. Those will be requirements of that development for the property. So I'll pass it back to your worship if council has any questions.
Thank you, Executive Manager Stang, for that. Any questions or comments? Council Baker.
Just one, Your Worship, only because I can't read the map. The land on west of the refinery, how many acres is in that parcel on the west side of 50, what is it, on 58?
59.
59.
That consists of,
That long strip, how many acres is that?
that consists of 34.1 acres.
That's the whole thing. So
That-
is Husky taking how much of it?
34.
Taking it all. So our pipe yard will be gone, as we call it, for lack of a better word.
Our here.
The existing leases, I think you're referring to, Councillor, it is a pipe yard and storage, but it's all individual leases that people or
Yeah.
companies have existing today in the city, I believe. So those leases.
Yeah, currently I think there's only one company leasing. So there is no subdivision there. It's one parcel. We have them kind of subdivided on our map for what we lease out, parcels that we lease out. I think there's currently one active, and the other parcels, Husky Oil Operations or Husky Midstream General, is in the process of looking to lease those lands until those lands can be turned over. The leasee that's currently on those lands would then be leasing from Husky, as well as the individual that's leasing the Husky North Kodiak lands would then, once the title is transferred, be leasing from the city of Winchester.
Well, the only reason I bring it up, over the years, the many years in this city, oil companies that say, where can we store our pipe? And that junk was all somewhere in our planning, somewhere around the periphery of the city, out of the road. You may look at a pipe yard for the future. Oil will come back. And I think it's a service that many oil companies appreciated when they could have a place to store that kind of stuff. Because on your developed sites, 2 and 3 acres, or whatever they are over in the industrial park, you really don't have a lot of room to store a lot of that stuff in. I just wasn't sure if we were using it all, because I can't read what's on this map. So it might be something to look at in the future, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I would think if there was a request and there was no other lands available and somebody was looking for a pipe lay down here, we would find something that we could accommodate that. No
That's
problem.
great, yeah, perfect.
And I do agree with you, Councillor, it will come back, it's just a matter of when, someday.
Thank you.
I think the question for Executive Manager Stang, I was asked this, and I figured this was the best place to answer it in a public format from the city administration. The North Kodiak site has an environmental assessment been completed that we've seen.
Has the environmental assessment been done? So within the agreement, both parties, the city as well as Husky Oil, have 60 days to provide any environmental documentations that have been done on the said lands, and also it's a condition that those results of those documentations have to be acceptable to both parties. So that's something we'll be pursuing as we go forward. It is my understanding that that land is completely free and clear of any environmental conditions. I guess that will come out in the next 60 days. And again, if we're not satisfied with the condition of that land, to withdraw from the union.
Appreciate that, and I think that because when the individual that stopped me on the street said, well, that's Kodiak lands, I went, yes, that's the North Kodiak lands, but I know there's been a lot of work by Husky being done with the South Kodiak lands, but I don't want to get them confused, and wanted to be assured that the public interest must be protected from that perspective.
Yeah, the South Kodiak, obviously, there's been some concerns there. The track, the CN track has always divided the North Kodiak and the South Kodiak, so as far as my understanding of that land, there is zero impact. There was some issues further east when we were constructing the outfall structure of the channel that runs along the South Kodiak lands. That has all been remediated and taken care of by both Husky and the city, and that is very outside of where this South Kodiak land is adjacent.
Great, thank you very much. Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think my question kind of along similar lines is the mayor's one. As far as process, is it normal for us to do the environmentals after this coming through council? Just because my question is really around how can we say that the value dollar for dollar is equivalent value if we haven't had an assessment done as to whether or not, you know, there's something going on there?
Yeah, Husky and the city has had a lot of conversations around these lands, and we've been pretty open and upfront with some of the issues that we currently have within our lands. Husky's aware of that, and they have been providing some of that documentation already. And like I said, as far as I know, Husky hasn't disclosed that there has been any environmental considerations on the North Kodiak site, nor do I believe there is. So if there was a documentation, we would have been provided that already. So I don't.
Okay. No, I guess just at the end of the day,
we have some environmental remediation that is required on the lands, and part of the agreement is Husky's taking those on and assuming the responsibility for cleanup. That's on the 59th Ave. So they're very aware that we provide documentation for that, and that's their business. They're going to do that. We're going to take that on. With regards to the North Kodiak site, as I indicated, there's no indication that there's ever been any impact to that from an environmental perspective.
okay. And then this is the same item that we saw in GPC, and maybe I missed this question, but as far as contact with the family that donated the land, has anything been done as far as contact with that? You guys asked that? Sorry, I missed that. You good? My bad. So-
They've tried to contact them. Quick summary.
Yeah, so as I indicated earlier, I've reached out to the family. I've talked to the legal firm that handled the estate back in '94. They provided a contact for one of the family members, albeit not a direct family member. It was a relation. I've tried contacting that individual on numerous occasions and have not had any luck in connecting. There's no answering service on the end of that line, and the city's, I've reached out on numerous occasions at different times of the day, after hours, early morning, early afternoons, haven't been able to contact the individual. So we tried our best this week to fulfill what council was asking us, but unfortunately wasn't able to make that connection.
Okay.
Councilor Baker.
Your worship, and normally in most land transactions, there's conditions both ways, subject to use. It could work both ways. Our land and their land. It could be the park or it could not be the park. I think there should be conditions that are satisfied before the transaction's completed. That's just a normal way of doing it. I know. Thanks.
And I think that's noted as the executive manager on my 60 days to ensure follow-up and go from there from that perspective. And, you know, as I mentioned in the GPC meeting, I think that this request for administration from Husky reflects the commitment of our community to work with a major oil producer and a major employer in our community to ensure their viability in the long term, since they're looking at access to pipeline right away, and we know that's in the news each and every day, and I think it's really falls to us to send a clear and concise message. We do appreciate them being part of our community, and we are supportive of the industry, and by doing a fair and open and transparent lands transaction, keep them moving forward in the future as well. Any other comments? I'll look for council then for direction on 8.3.2 with the amendment as noted by Executive Manager Stanley.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Council Dutcher.
I'll need the move that council approve the City of Lloydminster enter a land exchange agreement with Husky Midstream General Partnership and Husky Oil Operations Limited, and that the subject lands will form part of the land exchange agreement, include Husky Oil Operations Limited lands, Kodiak North Site identified and attached Schedule A, City of Lloydminster lands, 23.76 acre portion along northern boundary northwest 12-50-28 west of the 3rd in the City of Lloydminster, and our over sanitary right away in the northeast corner northwest 12-59-28 west of the 3rd in the City of Lloydminster, identified as attached Schedule B1, 2.64 acre portion adjacent to Highway 17 to the 17 in Arnold, Britannia, identified and attached Schedule B2, 34.1 acre parcel along 59th Avenue west of Husky Midstream General Partnership Terminal in the City of Lloydminster, identified and attached Schedule B3, and
That the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents.
the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents.
Thank you, Councilor. Seconded. Councilor Baker. Are you seconding?
Question, one other question.
I need a seconder first. Seconder, Councilor Monroe. Councilor Baker.
Should there not be a, just to end that, say, subject conditions by both parties? Should that be added to the motion?
I believe that's, I'll look
Yeah,
at
that's in the agreement. There are conditions in the agreement. One of those is council approval, and the other one's, we had talked about disclosures of environmental and leases being transferred and all those other things. So those are definitely within the agreement. And again, we've had legal review of all those, and we're comfortable with them.
I'm only going by what I read
Yeah,
here.
no, so it would be form the basis of the agreement. Does that answer your question?
That's okay then.
Any other questions? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Secretary Manager Slaney. Moving on to 8.4, City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. For item 8.4.1, 2020 operating budget and 2020 capital budget, I'll ask the CFO, Denise McDonald, to present.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council.
Good afternoon, CFO.
This afternoon, we have the 2020 operating budget and capital budget. The first draft was presented November 12th in the Governance and Priorities Committee meeting, and inquiries from that committee were responded to November 18th, Governance and Priorities Committee meeting. From that, do you want me to go through the PowerPoint presentation, or what would you prefer I go through?
I think the review of the PowerPoint for both council and the public, and if there's any questions, we'll wait till the end, I hope, and go from there.
Would you be open to just going through the operating highlights and the capital highlights and next steps?
I believe so. I think that, some of the early stuff is the basics, we've got to produce a budget, and how we got there.
So the operational highlights include a 2.5% increase in the municipal tax levy, consolidation and standardization of our administration expense to show true costs in specific areas included the fleet, equipment rent, building and office rent, janitorial, printer costs, utility costs. Items previously reported in capital that were under $10,000 have been moved to operations. Assessment and taxation costs have been reduced as the 2020 is the first full year of in-house assessment, and 2019 included half a year of the consult contract. 1.2 million increase to reserve contribution for taxes to be less resilient, reliant on utility revenues. Includes the new collective agreement for the fire department and the current structure. And we've made allocations for the fourth position on call. Transportation continuing with enhanced road maintenance implemented in 2019. RCMP contract 2.4% increase. With consideration consideration of the economic realities, administration worked diligently to keep the costs at a minimum without reducing service levels. Not included at this time are the unfunded amortization that we expect to be about 23 million, just for ease of identifying that it's a balanced budget. Then I'll go down to the capital highlights. So administration has high priority capital projects for $20,609,025. A second list of capital priorities has been identified that council will work with stakeholders on how best to proceed, and we've reduced that from what was initially proposed to 10,400, so that council has an opportunity to pull more stakeholder input on the sanitary sewer line, which was slightly over 9 million, and the cultural center. They'll work with stakeholders for further input. So overall, there's a capital project listing of $31,009,025. Our next steps would be to the draft budget again includes a residential and commercial municipal tax levy increase of 2.5%, and this allows the City of Lloydminster to keep pace with inflationary costs and sustain service levels and contribute a modest amount towards important operational and capital reserves. And so with council's blessing, we'll go back to page 3. We put forward two recommendations that council approve the 2020 operating budget with a total operating revenue of $47,614,792, operational expenses of $84,813,361, resulting in a taxation levy requirement of $37,207,940, excluding amortization, with the 2020 capital budget, which has a total capital revenues of $31,009,025 to support the total costs of the same amount. And the second recommendation would be that council direct administration to bring back the 2020 operational and 2020 capital budget for further review upon receipt of the final mill rate calculation and establish eligible grants and education requisitions from the province expected in the spring of 2020. If I can just remind council that if there are any changes, that we can make changes at that time also.
Thank you, CFO. Appreciate you bringing that forward. I think the second part of the recommendation is as strong as the first part. We've talked about it at this council chamber and this table for a number of years, concerned about a budget and with respect to where it would fall the following spring when it comes to assessment and the mill rate and the final tax bills that our taxpayers receive. And I remind taxpayers again that this council is prepared, as we have been each and every year, wait and see what the provincial governments give or take away. And it's more take away lately than give. But from that perspective, what they're funding and what they're not. And the City Council will be prepared to deal with the issues that we face at that time. It's challenging because the city does require an operational budget effective January 1st to move forward. And it's funny because here we are, a product, yet we don't follow their financial timetable of February or April 1st or March 31st, and so we're offset. So we have no choice but to pass a budget before the provincial budgets roll out. And we all know that they can contain all sorts of things. So it's very challenging, but I appreciate what administration's brought forward. Tax increase at the time that we are in the economic situation that our city and our two provinces face is not a very pleasant reality. I read again today that we're losing potash mines being closed in Saskatchewan because of the CN rail strike. And that's a matter that's outside of even the province's control. It's a federal regulated matter now. And challenges like that we have, and it's shown very clearly, we have no control over our local economy. We can often try and send and assist where we can, but we do not have the ability to influence the economy of the city directly at this chamber and this council. I think that helps I hope people to understand that we're trying to do the best we can do. At the end of the day, we are a service organization that they pay for. Customer service, we provide services each and every day to every taxpayer and every visitor to our city. Our arenas are busy this time of year. We know in the summertime our parks are at full capacity and used. Our swimming pools used year-round, all funded by the taxpayer. And I appreciate that. I think they appreciate the services they receive to the best of the ability of the administration and council to provide those services. And I think that it's something that waits on me each and every day as I think about the tax increase, but I know it's challenging. In talking to the community as often as I can, I hear from people, hold the course, continue what you're doing. We have had challenging times, and as Councilor Baker said, we hope things will get better. And I know they will. It's just a matter of when. And I think as a community, if we can continue to strive for the best that we can with the resources that we have and do the best job we can, because we have a very great community, and I think that we should be proud of that community. The residents are proud of that community, and we showcase it each and every day when we host events and people travel through our community. They tell us we're clean, where it's nice to see that. I think from an economic development perspective, our team at the city is working extremely hard to try and encourage investment in the city. And we have positive notes from the business community saying they see the value. But at the end of the day, it takes money to make this place run. And there's no doubt about it. At the end of the day, we need to ask for their support with that. I hope they understand. I know not everyone will because it's challenging to address it. But from the perspective I appreciate what administration has done. They've whittled and went back a couple different times to the team as accountable and responsible as they can be for the taxpayers' money in this community. I appreciate that. I know there's always work to be done, but I appreciate the work they have done, and they've done a great job of keeping it there. When we look at the cost drivers that we're encouraging on this budget alone, 2.5% is very light compared to what we've gone through. We found money inside the city. I appreciate that. We have cut back capital. You won't see as many streets ripped up. Some people will be happy about that until they have a water leak and say, why didn't we fix that? And I know Executive Manager Stagg and his team will ensure that they will be fixed as best they can and will continue to deliver the services that people have come to know in the city. That's my input. That's certainly Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question before I provide any comment, and it's specifically about a trails and sidewalk master plan. There was an item on there that I've asked about a couple times now, and last I understood is that we are likely going to do a full review of our transportation master plan in 2021, but there's still some potential of spending $150,000 on a sidewalks and trail master plan in the current year, even though the transportation master plan also includes sidewalks and trails. So I was just curious if we still are budgeting to do that project this year.
Yes, it's still in the capital budget. We took it back and reviewed it from engineering services team. The transportation master plan isn't due until 2023. Although it is we do our master plans every 5 years. The priority to complete the storm master plan as well as sanitary sewer master plan and water master plan take priority over the transportation master plan. So based on the projection of when we're going to complete them, we're expecting to complete the transportation master plan in 2023 or start that process in 2023. And in saying that, if we don't do the trail master plan, there isn't any. Our trails aren't going to fall apart today or tomorrow. There's no major impact to the service we provide. Our standard or our current protocols within engineering services and transportation services will apply. What the transportation or trail and sidewalk master plan would do is determine a hierarchy of crossing improvements, determine what areas need to be addressed first, propose a standard warrant analysis matrix for determining if the crossing requires upgrades or improved safety measures, and providing recommendations on a trail connectivity and expansion plan. We've talked about all this. At the end of the day, from an administration perspective, we feel that the trail master plan will provide value. It's been discussion we've had in the past with regards to looking at our trails from a city perspective on a whole, which include Government Park as well as all the other trails. Having a plan in place to know where we're going, when they're going to be remediated, what trails need to be addressed and whatnot. I think it's important we keep that in the plan. At the end of the day, it's council's decision if that's something you would like us to defer until 2023. Administration is definitely open to doing that.
I guess if it's being deferred till 2023 to update rather than 2021, maybe that changes things. I still think that value for dollar, it's likely going to be a lot cheaper for what you're getting if you were to simply tack it on to the next time you do your transportation master plan rather than doing it as its standalone service. But that's not, an exact science. It's just, I'd imagine it would be a less expensive activity because you're doing some of the same things already. The other thing would just be I guess I think I've made my personally don't think that it's a $150,000 priority. But when I look around the table, I'm the only one I can hear saying these things, so I don't know that there is broad support for that idea, so I'll leave it at that. Because the budget on the whole, I had comments on that, just this one particular item. If it were to be cut, then there's $150,000 that could go towards a project that I think probably has more value, like some of our buildings reports and things like that I think are more of a priority than that item, which could be covered within a different master plan in the next few years. That's all I'll say on that item.
Any other comments? Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Richard. I guess you could comment about a lot of things when you got a budget as big as this. But I have one item that concerns me, and I've been trying to do a little research on it on my own, and that is the roof on the Civic Center, Service Sports Center. We have about $500,000 in the budget, plus to fix the roof. And that building, I can't remember when we opened it, 05 or 06 or 07, somewhere, 10 to 12-year-old roof. We had a general contractor who was rated as a highly professional contractor. And in the contract itself, there would have been warranties to cover all kinds of things. Manufacturer's warranties are usually longer than 2 years, where contractors' warranties might be 2 years. So I'm not sure where we're sitting on that, but I talked to roofing contractors that are in the business, and if I understood it correctly, the screws are coming loose on that building somewhere. I've never seen anything other than heard that in this room. So I asked the contractor, I said, what do you think of that? He said, well, I'm not sure how the screws come in. It should be all standing seam roof, whole roof. And he said, the screws shouldn't be coming loose. And I said to him, I said, if the city approached you, would you have a look at it? And he said, certainly. He said, no charge, he would look at it. But $500,000 to fix the roof that's 12 years old. Something going on here with me that really is a problem. And I guess I'd have to go back to the original tender documents and look at the warranties and what was specified and get the architect involved and find out what's really going on with that roof. Because I know there's all kinds of roofs, maybe not as big as that, but they're metal roofs, similar type construction. They're 35 years old in the city. Other than rusting out, so there's pinholes in them, they're still solid on the roof. And I don't know how we arrived at, yes I do and I don't, how we arrived that we had to needed a new roof, but I really think we gotta look into that one, big time. And at the pleasure of the city manager and the mayor, I'll gladly sit down with them and fill them in on if they're interested. But $500 million is a lot of money. And that's our best guess right now, I would guess. You know, I don't think we've gone to 10. If it means tightening some screws, maybe it means a few things of repair, no argument. But to replace a roof or a big portion of that roof would really be a concern to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think I've shared that with administration. You want to speak to, because just for clarity's sake, I don't think we're replacing the roof, but I'll let them.
Whatever we're doing.
What we're doing, and I'll look to executive manager, standing through the city manager to respond to that, Councillor. You're absolutely right, and I think that, you've read the numbers right, and I think this is one of those budgetary items that they've looked at. I'll look to executive manager Stan.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. We've had the exact same thoughts as Councillor Baker. We have been in the process of getting to the bottom of the issues that are going on with the Service Support Center roof. It's not the entire roof, obviously. It's two portions of it where the flat membrane is underway. We had the original contractor review that. So I'll read you a statement that we had put together, and I provided this to our city manager here on Friday with regards to the questions around that. So during the building review at ACI, architects provided the leaks at the Service Support Center roof was discussed, and ACI recommended looking at the product warranty of the roof to see if that was an option for this project. In August of 2019, Wade Engineering was engaged and did a roof inspection that included both the flat membrane and the metal sheet portions of the roof. There had been a report also done by Wade Engineering in 2015. This report showed much less work needed to be done at that point in time, which tells us that the roof has continued to deteriorate from 2015 to today. Wade Engineering provided a quote for the area of needing repair. The total quote provided by Wade Engineering at that time was between $446,500 and $582,500. In early November, Carlisle, the manufacturing warranty, sent a contractor to provide a roofing audit. We're still waiting to see the results of this audit. Verbally, it sounded like there were issues with the installation, but more investigation will need to be done to determine if this is a warranty issue. This may be something that we will need to seek legal review and advice with regards to the original contract. Locally, we had Rana Roofing also inspect the roof and has provided an estimate for the repairs in a total of $412,000. With regards to a local construction company, Bexon Construction, although we've had multiple people come and look at that, if it is council's wish, we can definitely engage with Bexon Construction and have them come have a look at the roof and provide a quote as well. As with all large capital projects, if council approves this project in the 2020 capital budget, administration will be tendering this project as per purchasing policy and would be open to all contractors to provide bids and quotes on. So I hope that answers all the questions that were proposed by Councilor Baker. At this time, we're not 100% sure whether warranty is applicable or is not. We're still in those investigation process, but all the quotes tell us that we're in the 400 to 500 range to fix what's currently deteriorating on that roof.
It's $500,000, that is the issue. A roof on a building that size and of that quality of building should last longer than whatever it's lasted, in my mind. And I've talked to people in the roofing business, they would think so too. But I don't know, somewhere there I'm sure there's a clear report that I haven't read or others haven't read. But it just seems to me that a building of that structure should last a lot longer than the number of years it has. It's not, I mean, if you have to replace half the roof, maybe it is $500,000. That isn't the argument. It's why is the roof the way it is? Why is it falling apart? And why are we stuck with the bill? Has anybody looked at the warranties, the manufacturer's warranty on the material, which is a normal document that's supplied with most general contracts by the manufacturer? I don't know what's happened, but it still shows up in the budget, and I question it now. That's what I'm questioning. Why is the roof falling apart? Not what it cost. Thank you.
So I think, Councillor, as I understood from my understanding, that it is being explored from the warranty, and you're absolutely right. I said that, and I would expect administration will lead the charge in answering those questions in due course as we move forward with or without. If we get into it, and as we've talked about, this budget is an intended potential before that was approved at this table, which we'll come back to for that award of contract, if that's where we end up. We will have more answers, but I'm sure to answer where the legal side, and I'll look to the city clerk, because that seems to be his avenue, as well as we'll have opinions of several local.
It's really the legal side.
Yeah, and I think the legal side and that will be pursued accordingly from the city's perspective, because you're absolutely right. I think that the taxpayers and again donated money built that building, and we want to ensure that it's followed through. So we'll leave that task to the administration to go forward, but I think that the budgetary amounts, we hope we don't need it, but if we don't budget it, it'll be a little tougher coming back looking for $500,000 to keep a prestige building in our city that's talked about as sort of a gem in the shape it's in. So I hope that answers your question. I'm sure we're going to hear more from administration on this as we move forward.
Yeah, and your worship, you explained it perfectly from an administration perspective. When it is determined who's responsible for what with regards to the warranties, and we have read and reviewed all warranties. Again, it comes down to interpretation, and that's something we're still working on. When we do bring that back, we'll have a lot more of those clarity. We will have a lot more clarity on those issues, and we'll be provided full report with regards to that.
Thanks.
That's good.
Okay, Councilor Torsten, then Councilor Batchelor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I got a couple things. One is page 315. I know I've looked at this document, I don't know how many times now, but this is just a comment on the page itself if we're going to use this figure. I don't know if the intention was on the 2020 line to have different numbers just in the municipal and school tax and then show the difference, because it's the same numbers and then the plus 41. Is that what we meant to do, or are we meaning to show what the number is? Anyway, it's the same on both of them, so that was just a general comment, not a big deal. But generally about the budget, I just wanted to provide some comment. I'm at the point with where we've gone through, the level of detail we've gone through with this budget process has been, far superior to any other year that this council has been, in this role. And the amount of time and the amount of information we've gotten to be able to make an informed decision has been, amazing. I really do think that finance and administration as a whole has done a great job in terms of giving council all the information we need to make a good decision. So the process overall, I just want to say, has gone very well from my perspective. As far as the budget itself, we're doing a lot in 1 year, to be honest with you. The 2.5% increase that's being proposed is doing a lot within that 2.5%, and I don't think that can go unnoticed. We're continuing to wean ourselves off of utility revenue, which for those who don't understand, the utility system, if it becomes self-sustaining in the future under the new mechanical wastewater treatment plant, it's going to have long-term debt, and it's going to have to cover its own operation. It's going to have to cover its own capital cost and own long-term debt. So we have to wean ourselves off of that profit that in the past has kept property taxes lower. So in this point that it's standalone, can pay for itself, and it's got kind of its own business plan that works for itself, and then programs and services happen independently over here. And we're continuing with that process this year, which is really good. And then any money in reserve from that can go towards the utility system itself, which is a great idea. In terms of the other increases that we're facing, we've got the fire department, which from a few years ago is, I can't remember the exact number from the last meeting, but over $2.5 million more than it used to be on an operational basis. When you're talking about, you know, in the ballpark of, what is it, $30 million operational budget, or is it operational 60?
84 million is the operation.
84 million is the operation?
Some,
The
yeah.
entire.
That's including user fees though, so we're
Right.
looking at 37 million for municipal.
That's the number I'm looking for, is the 37 million from municipal taxes. As far as that goes, when you're getting another $2.5 million that's coming from property taxes as its basis, we are doing a lot in terms of reducing capital and keeping everything as close to the line as it was before. Compromising levels of service. So when you add that and a potential new fire hall within the current year, we are doing a lot in this year. We are taking on a little bit of debt, and I appreciate the facts and figures on page 3. I lost it now. 313 and 312. I think those are really important because if you're running for council in the next election, it's really important for you to know and understand how much of the city's budget is going to be taken up as a portion of principal and interest payments, because that's really going to limit your ability of what you want to do in the future. And we've been very diligent, I think, in trying to maintain our levels of debt and not get crazy. But it's still something that you're going to come up against, and it's going to be a challenge for you as you go through this process. So, you know, as far as what we've done in the last few years, I understand it's been painful for individuals, and there's, you know, not a lot of necessarily wage growth within the city. But keeping our property tax increase to just over, or right around 2.5% when inflation is expected to be about 2%, I'd say that we did a lot when you consider those things. So, thank you. I appreciate finance and administration's job on this, and I think, you know, really well done all around.
Councilor Batchelor.
Pretty much what he said. That was a lot, and I'm not sure there's anything. The folks within the finance department for the work they're doing. I know that they do it with passion and commitment, and perhaps it'll be a bit of an opportunity to catch a breath and maybe not be here till late at night and actually spend some time at home with the family. So we're looking forward to that for you as well. I just wanted to add one more comment relative to, I guess, the roof, and we've had experience in the past where actually reverted to the insurance to actually deal with the roof and the insurance that went chasing after the warranty and all those other pieces. I think it's important for us to leave it in the budget. The reality is that if we don't fix it, we're going to have more damage, and there's no guarantee that in the end we're going to be settling with a warranty that with a company that may not even be in existence anymore. I think past experience the city's had with warranties is that tends to come a lot later than the 1 year that we're trying to make things happen. So I think in terms of preserving the quality of our facilities, we keep it in the budget and move forward and sort it out as we go. I absolutely agree that we need to pursue those avenues and pursue them with vigor, because certainly I don't think the city should be taken advantage of relative to the standards and warranties that should be available to us as anybody else in the business sector. So I again encourage our administration to pursue that.
Councilor Monroe.
Well, just a comment to Project Economic Development event hosting feasibility study. Maybe the city manager can speak to it. I understand that it was recommended in the 2016 Recreational, Cultural and Parks Facility Master Plan to do this study. However, I just don't know if this is the opportune time, and $75,000 price tag in 2 years, are we going to have to, is it still going to be a document we're going to be able to use? So it was, project number 2063001. Sorry that I overlooked it previously.
That project was removed.
Oh, it was removed,
The
okay.
feasibility study, the event hosting feasibility study was removed.
And then what about the other one, 2063002?
That is the, sorry about that.
Is that the intermodal one study?
Sorry.
So we took the feasibility study, and we took the
The food and farming asset
Both were moved, and we added the intermodal transport study,
Right.
which we
Hey,
had discussed. so.
That's my mistake then, sorry. And I did have a doctor's appointment that day with that little span when we were really cute. So that's my, sorry.
Could we stop being sick?
I don't know. Believe me, thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding the budget, proposed budget for 2020 in city buildings?
Yeah, I got it.
Counselor,
Sorry.
you got it.
It's weighing on my heart, it usually comes out of my mouth, good or bad. It's a proud moment for me. And I say that because I've watched our staff, from our high-level administration to everybody in finance, to the people I sit with around this table, pour over this. This group has always poured over it, but maybe not as deep as we did this year. And there was a ton of time put in by everybody to get it to this point. Percent increase, a win. I can tell you that it is. To kind of echo Councillor Torres's comments, nobody wants to do that at the end of the day. But at what point do you cut service levels? And you ask people, what would you see cut? Nobody come up with that. You've said it 100 times, Your Worship. So I just wanted to take the opportunity publicly to thank everybody that had a hand in it, because I can safely tell you that before sitting around this table, I paid attention to how this went. But I had no idea, to be quite honest, before sitting around this table, how it really goes. So it's a feather in the cap to everybody that's been a part of this, because it's an almost insurmountable amount of work and effort that's gone into getting here, and they did it anyway. So I just wanted to say publicly thanks to everybody for that. I couldn't not.
Thanks, Council. Any further discussion? If not, I will look for direction on 8.4.1, city budget.
Sure.
Councilor Thorson.
I move that council approve the 2020 operating budget with a total operating revenue of $47,614,792, operating expenditure of $84,813,361, resulting in taxation levy requirement of $37,207,940, excluding amortization, and the 2020 capital budget, which has total capital revenues of $31,009,025 to support total costs of $31,009,025.
Thank you, Councilor Senator. Councilor Diachin. Any further discussion or questions before I call for the question? Councilor Baker.
Your Worship, I'm just not quite sure how to word this. Keeping in mind that a portion of the capital budget is kind of sitting there tied to provincial and federal grants, about the value of $10 million. Have I got that right? Give or take? Is that right? To the city manager or to the...
I think our MSI, it'd be MSI, it'd be gas tax, I think we're about, right here, we're 4, 5, about 7 million, 6 million. 6
For
million.
whatever the number.
Yeah.
But some of it's tied to that, subject to grant money, right? That will be reviewed before.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Just so the
anything-
public understands.
Yeah, absolutely, and anything that's above the threshold for the authorization for the city manager would come forward, being $200,000, I believe. City manager,
200,000.
200,000?
Yeah, I'd also suggest in this budget, we've been fairly conservative with those grant numbers in terms of what we've put in the budget compared to what we could get. So when we get to March, April, when the provincial budget comes down, we'll have a better, closer reflection of that, and we can make those modifications at that time as we receive the money, once we get the final numbers.
Whatever the number is, but sorry, I didn't have that on my head.
No problem. Any other questions? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I also move that council direct administration to bring the 2020 operating and 2020 capital budget forward for review upon receipt of the final mill rate calculation. Eligible grants and education requisitions from the provinces.
Seconder? Councilor Dychak? Again, I'll ask if there are any questions before I call for the
comment. And I think this is something to note, and this is something that Councillor Baker has talked about in the past as far as getting your tax roll prior to finally approving your budget for the year. And really what this is saying is in line with that, is saying, okay, once we have our tax roll, we have more information as far as government grants and what we're going to be getting for the year. If any adjustment to property taxes has to be made, and if anything can be made going down, up, whatever has to be done, that really is when the final approval of the budget in a way is done. So for now, we're approving something so that people can get working on their projects and we can continue on with operations. But it's not until that period when we actually approve the mill rate and go through that entire calculation that we're all the way through and complete within this year's budget. So that's all.
Well made comment. Any other comments? Not seeing any. I'll ask the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, CFO. And I believe we're going to go back to you for 8.4.2, the city manager.
Thank you for your support. The next item we have on the agenda is the 2020 nonprofit grant funding request. During the September 16th Governance and Priorities Committee meeting, about nonprofit organizations presented their request for funding assistance for the 2020 budget. Based on the direction of the committee and budget constraints, administration has made the following recommendations. SPCA, $75,000. Archives, $39,527. Vic Juba Community Theater, $181,500. Startup, $80,000, for a total of $376,027. We recommend that 4 separate recommendations be made in relationship to those nonprofits, but council gave us the direction to put forward some recommendations so that you could debate it.
Thank you, CFO. Some time ago, we were presented with several presentations from the community. Several of those groups, I shouldn't say several, some, I think most of them, were noted in the FCSS grants that were provided earlier today to help support their initiatives. Again, different requests were asked for in one-time grant money. I believe that each one, in many cases, those requests were supported by FCSS for their programming. And I appreciate administration trying to bring this forward. And I'll look to the CFO for an answer on this. The amounts that are proposed are currently in the budget that we've just approved, correct? That's the amount. That's what's
Yes, there's enough money in the budget to support the recommendations.
Okay, thank you. So if there's any additional requests made or approved by this council, it would put some strain on the budget, but I just want to make sure everybody's clear what was being proposed by administration today, and certainly the list, if there was something that this council felt that needed to be added to that, we have that ability to deal with it accordingly. Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is just some feedback that I kind of received on this process in general, and it's kind of that potentially our nonprofit organization policy funding type thing may have been a little too broad in terms of the application process, because at the end of the day what happened was you had several groups that are looking for their programs to get support and funding on, but then when it comes down to it, you know, the items that are really more provincial in nature and things like that didn't get a lot of broad support across the table here. So I just wonder if it's something worth circling back to make sure that we are advertising the right way and kind of doing the right thing, so that we're not providing false hope to some of the not-for-profits and not kind of pushing them in a direction that I don't know, will just end up confusing and with hurt feelings. So that was just some feedback I received, and it's maybe something worth looking into in the new year.
City manager.
Yeah, I would suggest administration agrees with that observation, and so it's something that we've talked about, and we'll, in the new year, we'll bring something back to council for review.
Dave's point well taken. I think that the challenge that we face year in and year out, and we've talked about it just as we were leading into the budget, what does the province give us and what's workable? We ended up with like I say, a haircut is the term I use to refer in some of our grant funding from the province for the city period. So we face a lot of increases in costs. And certainly I appreciate what administration proposed. It was an effort that was tried, and I appreciate the nonprofits putting forward the proposals, because they all aid, and again, back to what we just discussed at FCSS. It's an improvement to the community, people volunteering and trying to get something underway or continue. It's certainly a challenge, because at the end of the day, we have to wrestle with what's available for the public, where does it fit, and go from there. So it's never an easy slice, no matter how we cut this. Any other comments before we have some discussion and move through the list, if that's the wish of council? Councilor Rowe.
Well, just in regards to the recommendation number 4 for the Livingston Region Business Incubator Board startup, I think it is very important, and should this program not be available, obviously there would be a significant increase on the Economic Development Department within the community. However, I also realize that there are a few other organizations in Lloydminster, Community Futures and different things, that work somewhat in collaboration with them. So although I would to them, I would ask administration in the future that they work with startup to somehow come up with something that they perhaps have more of a self-sustaining model, that they're not coming to us necessarily for this large of an ask every year. Perhaps we do have a contribution, but I don't know that this is the number that we should be fully funding that organization. And not that we are fully funding it, but that we should be their main supporter. So I would ask that administration work with them to come up with something in the future. Perhaps I don't expect them to be next year come here with an ask of 0, but potentially over a few years that they are working towards more of a self-sustaining model.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Batchelor.
And I think, again, the review of the criteria is going to be a challenging task as well, because if you look at the organizations that have requested funds, you have everything from health, addictions, cultural and arts, and many other communities invest significant amount of dollars in each of those categories. The reality is that the funds available to us just aren't there to be able to say, here's some of the money that we have available to support in those areas. I'm not quite sure how other cities do. I'm not sure where the dollars and cents come from. I do know that in other communities that are, again, much larger than us, they rely a lot upon the fundraising and donor programs and other things that are in place, that we have some of those here as well. And that maybe just the size of our community that really has a bit of a limitation in terms of our capacity to be able to do some of these things, and it's part of the struggle and the growth process as we grow. But do you want to say no to mental health and the health and the well-being of our community? No. Is it our total responsibility? Not so much. Arts and culture, well, we could play a role in supporting that, and we do play a role through the Jew Theater and other pieces as well. And do they all come across as having value and merit and making our community richer and better place to grow our families and our communities? Absolutely they do. And so I good luck to administration, and I think those discussions are going to be really interesting in terms of how those criteria are set up. I have a couple of ideas. I guess at some point we'll chat a bit more about it, but are these short-term projects? Are they longer-term? Do they actually last more than a year? And we talk a lot about operations capital in our own budget, but there are other elements around this that you want to grow capacity in your community. And so those are some questions I think we could come up with that perhaps can help that, but I think it's going to be a real challenge.
Just one other comment, I guess. For me, a lot of these programs, Livingston Area Brain Injury Society, for example, there isn't anyone else in the community offering this type of an organization. So it was very hard for me to say, no, we're not going to fund them this year. But for me also, I do understand that if as a community, as a city, we can't completely fund our own operations and our own without raising taxes, how can we actually give money to another organization outside of our own. But I actually somewhat disagree with Councillor Tychuk in terms of these health and wellness and mental health initiatives for different things. Health is a provincial, and I understand that, but if the province isn't funding these things, they are our residents in our community, and they are our responsibility. So as far as maybe the province should be doing this, but if they're not, at the end of the day, every single person in this community is ultimately our responsibility, and we need to be looking after their well-being, to be quite honest. So obviously, that's how I personally feel. But as far as this list goes, I understand why we can't fund them, besides the Regional Business Accelerator, just because we need to be able to have our own box to be looking after something else.
The four that they selected has a very close tie to the city as well. Without the SPCA, these are, that would be mayhem for us trying to be in the animal business. And with the Lloyd-Minster District Society Regional Archives, I think most cities have their own. They look after that. And I think we're seeing a move for perhaps for our city taking a look at incorporating them. Vic Juba Theatre, we're ultimately very responsible for, if anything. And I think that when we talk about the Startup Lloyd-Minster, there's been a lot of money invested by the city as well as by the chamber and other organizations over the years. And I think that they have come down, but they do play an important role, again, tied in with the city on the economic development. So out of those four, we're getting they're the basic fabric of our community. I mean, what can you say about them? So important. And I just wish that we had those funds that we could support those asks that they asked for. But it's tough. Economic times out there, and we just have to adjust.
Well said, Councillor. Any other comments? Councillor Baker.
Your Worship, when you tie FCSS and the community grant fund that we have here together, it's really all one of the same. I think the mistake when we went out there and made the announcement for nonprofits to apply, we didn't necessarily that I could see break out FCSS and the standards and the community grant, and it got. So I think that's a bit of a real problem. But we talked about, for instance, things like SPCA is a city responsibility. Period. If the volunteers weren't running it, we'd be running an SPCA full time. If the archives, that was started by the city during the centennial year. So that's our responsibility. What's the other one? There's another one there. Vic Juba Theatre. The city built it, so we got to run it. And if they're struggling because membership is down or attendance are down because of the economic times, you got to keep the building open. It's that simple. We talked about one-time grant. And I don't know how that applies to all this. Does that mean next year none of these people can apply?
I think that what the belief I have and the understanding I have now to the city managers, we're going to revamp this because, as you just said, Councillor, it wasn't what I think the administration or council was hoping to get for a result. I think what my personal intention and belief is that the city here is here for opportunities for people if they have a special one-time project that would enhance the community, enhance viability in a one-time shot versus an annual repeat, whereas we have FCSS, that is that support. And I think the administration is going to go back, rework it, and I'll look to the city manager for his comments because I think we have chatted to the side on this thing. There's something we can do, I think, a little different, and I'll look to the city manager to add any comments he might have.
I would agree with what you said. Yeah, as I said before, our intention is to bring that item back in early in the new year for revisiting with council.
Well, I understand what went haywire, like we're all part of it. It's not any one group, we're all part of it. But we need to look at that. And another thing, I'm not sure of financial statements and or balance sheets. Do the nonprofits have to submit those?
That was part of the grant in these recommendations would have to follow through with the grant the grant requirements that we proposed for this. So yes.
For money, do they have to submit a bank balance or where they are? Because, you know, some groups might be sitting there with a lot of money sitting in the bank and they're looking for more money. And is that the idea of the program, or do the nonprofits have to produce a balance sheet of where they're at, whether they need money or they don't need money, or how much they need or don't they need? Is that a requirement of the?
The requirement of this application was that they put forward a budget, and then at the end of the year, they were required to put forward financial statements.
They don't have to produce anything up front then?
Not up front for their bank balance, but their budget, they did.
Yeah.
And that was provided to council and they presented on that.
Because I think that nonprofits, like anything, should have to report what's going on.
Yeah.
In confidence, of course.
Absolutely, and I think that following the FCSS model, from that perspective, I understand they do that, as well as from the perspective of these groups will be providing a report back to council.
Obviously, they can't do it on year one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think.
But I'm not asking for financial statement, I'm saying a balance sheet.
Balance sheet. Yeah, I think that the
Well, that's my learned friend here, maybe.
Financial.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that there was a request, showing where the money would be allocated to was the part of the application process from that perspective. And since I think I've attended one or two of the annual meetings out of the four, certainly there is a demand from that perspective of the numbers that I've seen from annual reports, that funding is crucial to ensure for continue on. And the one I wanted to bring back to council, just for everybody's information, my understanding is the city, through the former Lloydminster Economic Development Corporation, the LEDC, excuse me, this council, we brought it back in-house to the city, was a founding member of the incubator, which now is Startup Lloydminster. So the city has been involved from day one with Startup Lloydminster in one form or another, but it was arm's length at the time when it started, through LEDC, because that was a separate corporation. But the city has been involved with the Startup Lloydminster from the beginning, and another one of those, as Councilor Fagin alluded to, has been part of the fabric of this community for some time. Any other comments? Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Your Worship. This document kind of speaks to what we talked about through the budget process and how difficult it was and how difficult it is. If you look at the two things, for me, that I look at on here, you've got the vision statement of the city. Canada's border city, a proud community with opportunity for all. That's one. The second one is providing quality programs and services to the community. That's two. You've got to look at these things, and with the budget the way it is, and the way everything is, these are not easy decisions to make. These four listed here fit in with the strategic plan of this council. We can comfortably fall back on that as a good reasoning for things, because those are the mission and value statements that we came up with as a group. And I think we're sticking to them with this allocation.
City Manager.
Just a note, omission that was normally in, we call third party aspect of the nonprofits is the library. The library was included in the main budget document based on the numbers they had last year with a modest increase. So that's that. If there's questions around where the library is in this process, it is in the main budget. That was earlier approved.
Thank you, City Manager. And I think that's that discussion. Have true third-party asks, but I'll leave that discussion for another day from that perspective, and how we look at that and how it's budgeted accordingly. Because, in essence, without the support of this council for these organizations, I don't know where they'd be. And we have ties to many of them, directly or indirectly, that would have a significant impact on the city. Last question. Any further questions? Not seeing any. I will look for direction from City Council, and as the CFO indicated, we'd like to do each recommendation individually. So I'll look for direction from Council. Councilor Buckingham.
First off, I move that council approve the Lloydminster District SPCA 2020 nonprofit grant funding in the amount of $75,000.
Second. Councilor Monroe. Any further discussion before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor.
The council approved the Lloydminster District Centennial Commemorative Lloydminster Regional Archives Association 2020 nonprofit grant funding in the amount of $39,527.
Seconded by Councilor Monroe. Any further discussion or comments? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Buckingham.
The council approved the Big Chew Community Theatre Board, Big Chew Community Theatre 2020 nonprofit grant funding of $181,500.
Seconded by Councilor Monroe. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, all in favor? Councilor Buckingham.
The council approved the Lloydminster Region Business Incubator Board Startup Lloydminster 2020 nonprofit grant funding of $80,000.
Seconded by Councilor Monroe. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to the agenda of 8.5. Operations. Sorry, Councilor Corson.
I also meant to declare on this one earlier, so I failed on doing it. Thank you.
Certainly.
Goodbye.
City Manager.
Thank you, Worship. For item 8.5.1, 2019 Street Improvement Program Budget Reallocation for Land Acquisition, I'll ask James Roy to present.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon, James.
I'll try to get through this without coughing too much, as I think we're all coming down with colds. So, before you is a request for decision associated with the 2019 Street Improvement Program Budget Reallocation for Land Acquisition. Two recommendations that we have are as follows: that Council approve the reallocation of funds in the amount of $45,000 from the 2019 capital budget, project number 1913620, to cover expenses to be incurred in 2019 associated with the purchase of 0.532 hectares at the intersection of 12th Street and 75th Avenue, and that administration be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. And that Council approve the reallocation of funds in the amount of $23,650 from the 2019 capital budget, project number 1913620, to cover expenses to be incurred in 2019 associated with the purchase of 0.039 hectares at the intersection of 44th Street and 62nd Avenue, again, and that administration be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. The issue is that due to limited road right-of-way limits, the acquisition of land is required to accommodate intersection improvements and roadway widening. As the City of Lloydminster continues to expand its transportation network, and in an effort to promote safe and efficient movement of vehicles throughout the city, the need to acquire additional land is often introduced as additional road right-of-way is required. Acquire additional land are 12th Street and 75th Avenue, as well as at the intersection of 44th Street and 62nd Avenue. The acquisition of these lands will allow administration to widen the existing roadways to include right turn bays. The adjustment of the road right-of-way geometry will promote improved intersection efficiency and safety. The land to be acquired at the intersection of 12th Street and 75th Avenue is to accommodate the ultimate design of the 12th Street and 75th Avenue corridor as development continues to occur in the southwest quadrant of the city. As such, we will not require additional land acquisition at this intersection in this area. The land to be acquired at the intersection of 44th Street and 62nd Avenue is associated with the interim intersection design, with the assumption that additional land will need to be acquired along the 44th Street and 62nd Avenue corridors in the future as those ultimate designs are created and implemented. Before you, we have three options, or I guess two options. That Council approved the reallocation of funds in the amount of $45,000 from the 2019 capital budget, project number 1913620, to cover expenses to be incurred in 2019 associated with the purchase of 0.53 hectares or 1.31 acres at the intersection of 12th Street and 75th Avenue to accommodate road widening, and that administration be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. And second, that Council approve the reallocation of funds in the amount of $23,650 from the 2019 capital budget, project number 1913620, to cover expenses to be incurred in 2019 associated with the purchase of 0.039 hectares or 0.10 acres at the intersection of 44th Street and 62nd Avenue to accommodate road widening, and that administration be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. And the third option, The council directed administration to gather more information, and that information be presented at the next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Questions, comments? Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, James. So, no issues with the landowners or anything associated with these two purchases. It's basically set to go if we approve the funding.
Thank you for your question. Yes, we have been working with both current landowners on these. They are aware. We do have, I believe the term is an intent to purchase with them. We're working on the terms of that purchase. Everybody is amiable to transfer this money.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I think, James, thank you very much for bringing this forward, and I appreciate that this is budgeted money in 2019. It just wasn't, this has been ongoing, I know, for some time, these projects. I appreciate you bringing it forward, keeping within the budget, and still have some remainder yet to, so that will be money carried over to next year, hopefully, or put into reserves to be pulled towards doing these projects, or one of, if not both.
Correct. Thank you for that. We will be working with the finance department on how do we put this into reserves, carry it forward, or complete.
I know I've received many compliments about the improvements on 44th Street, the turning lane on the College going south, 62nd south. I think that anytime we can improve the flow of traffic, certainly at that intersection in particular, it speaks loudly and clearly. I think I've heard from residents that, and visitors to our community, they're very excited about the flow of traffic from the past. So I think if we can make an improvement, it's well worth it. And at the end of the day, that's part of the realm of this chair. Any other comments from council? With that, I will look for direction on 8.5. Councilor Pettit.
That council approved the relocation of funds in the amount of $45,000 from the 2019 capital budget project number 1913620 to cover expenses to be incurred in the 2019 associated with the purchase of the 1.31 acres at the intersection of 12th Street and 75th Avenue to accommodate road widening, and that administration be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents.
Seconder, Councilor Dietschel. Any further discussion or questions before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Councilor Fugis. Okay.
That council approved the relocation of funds in the amount of $23,650 from the 2019 capital budget project number 1913620 to cover expenses to be incurred in the 2019 associated with the purchase of the 0.10 acres at the intersection of 44th Street and 67th Avenue to accommodate road widening, and that administration be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents.
Seconder, Councilor Dietschel. Any further questions or comments before I call for the question? Not seeing any, I'll call for it. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, James.
Thank you, Jason.
Moving on to agenda items 8.7, bylaws, city manager.
Thank you, Worship. For item 8.7.1, land use bylaw 5/2016, text amendment to include cannabis and infused products. I'll ask Natasha Patel to come forward and present.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council.
Good afternoon, Natasha.
I'm here to ask Council to grant first reading to bylaw 28 to 2019, being a bylaw to amend section 1.5 use class definitions of our land use bylaw 5/2016. These proposed amendments are to align land use bylaw 5/2016 with the amendments made to the Cannabis Act on October 17, 2019. Information pertaining to these amendments was presented to GPC on October 21st. Amendments to the Cannabis Act came into force and effect on October 17, 2019, introducing the legalization of edible cannabis, cannabis extracts, and cannabis topical products. Our current land use bylaw explicitly restricts the sale and distribution of these products within the city. Amendments are being brought forth to bylaw 28, 2019 will amend section 1.5 use class definitions to align with these changes. No changes to permitted or discretionary use classes are proposed at this time. A referral period occurred in which internal departments, external agencies, and the general public was notified. This closed on November 22nd and no comments were received. These products are anticipated to reach the shelves in local stores in December 2019.
Thank you, Natasha. Councilman Rowe.
So if we were to not go ahead with this recommendation, what repercussions would there be?
I think maybe Doug can answer that based on our legal review.
It's what happened, correct?
So what this does is allows the city to then regulate the sales and possession and use of the product within the city limits. Without it, it's a legal product. It could be purchased outside the city, brought into the city. Our current bylaw prohibits certain usage and in certain areas, and this will allow us to continue and expand upon that and make sure that we have those regulations in place to deal with this new product.
Perfect, thank you.
Councilor Torres.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is just, when are these actually expected to be for sale in stores? I'm almost concerned that, not that I want to have a special council meeting, but, you know, we're not having this first meeting until December 16th, would be when we're doing our second and third reading.
Thank you.
If we do it, so then we're doing first reading today potentially, and then potentially second and third reading in December on the 16th. But if they're already available, do we already run the risk of not having a bylaw in place and it being the Wild West as far as what people want to do as far as cannabis-infused products? If we don't have it done yet and they're already available on the market?
So my understanding is that the province, when they go to bring these products into their stores, they will ask to see municipal approval. It'll just be an expansion onto the business license. We anticipate most of the current stores that are cannabis approved stores already will be the ones coming to bring in the topical products. And then once they have our approval, the province just kind of said they had a lag in product time, so that's why this was brought forward in October, and in December they'll be releasing the product, but until they have the municipal approval to go along with their provincial approval, they actually won't have them in store.
Oh, okay. So I guess that's a little bit maybe different than I understood, is how we normally look at, you know, why it's really important to ensure that you have the bylaw in place when sales start to happen, is because normally, you know, what I've said in the past and the way I understood it to be was, you needed to have, your land use bylaw needed to cover those items so that there was actually regulation around it to say where it could and could not be done. But if they're available for sale, there's no scenario where someone could start selling it from somewhere that's not currently, or that's because it's not covered within the land use bylaw, that they could do it somewhere without our control. You're saying there's no scenario where that can happen?
Currently, because of the way the products are rolling out and the way the province is moving forward, we're compliant with how we're moving. You're absolutely right. We normally would like to have all these things done beforehand, but as the cannabis piece is rolling out of the federal government, it's not really rolling out in a normal fashion, and we'd see another legislation move forward on.
Okay. Well, at the end of the day, if we feel comfortable that we're not too late by any means on doing the second and third reading, then I'm fine with that. But, you know, I would, I don't know, it makes me reconsider my own personal policy of first, second, third reading in one meeting when you're running up against the possibility of being in the absence of law. But you're saying that's not a concern here.
And Natasha, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a statutory public hearing that we have to do with this. We cannot do all three readings of this.
Okay.
We're prohibited by that. We have to advertise and there's a time limit.
Okay, fair enough.
Sure, I was just going to add that they still need a license to be able to sell a cannabis product, which means you can stop it to us.
Right, I think I think that at the end of the day, I hear Councilor Torres' concerns, but I think that what I'm hearing from administration is that the format that's in place isn't going to change, and there's laws and direct that is already in place from the province. If they're going to come to the municipality, until the municipality deals with this, they're unable to provide those products locally, even though, as it was discussed, they can be procured and brought into the community, but you won't be able to purchase them, which I appreciate. There's people that will want to purchase them, but we're moving this as long as best as we can, as it's been laid out by administration to deal with the issue. But there is a due process, and as Councillor mentioned, we do have a process that was established, and in this case, it does have to be followed. So it will be a little bit of a lag, but we're still waiting on the marketplace. I believe they're still not quite there yet, and with things going on federally and provincially. Councillor Baker and then Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. When this was brought for the first reading, I had some concerns with the project based on what was submitted. We had received a artist conception, if I got this straight.
No, I think you're on one next one, Councillor.
That's the next one.
Yeah, we're still doing
Okay,
okay.
sorry.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Worship. I like the city clerk's definition of how things are rolling out. It was great. If you're to read all of the things that or see all the things in the national news, these products aren't going to be available in December regardless. So they say the supply just isn't there to do that. So I think we are in a good timeline here, just to back up Councillor Torreson's concerns there, that if we get this done in December, we should be perfect.
Defer to the expert.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions?
At least you're on top of this stuff, so you know what's going on.
Not seeing any. I'll look for direction on 8.7.1 regarding the first reading of this bylaw. Councillor Buckingham.
I'll take the defer. The council grant first reading of bylaw 28-2019 being a bylaw to amend section 1.5 use class definitions of land use bylaw 5-2016, and the council established a public hearing to be held at City Hall Council Chambers during the regular council meeting on December 16th, 2019 at 2 p.m.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconded. Councillor Torres. Any further discussion or comments before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Natasha. Moving on to 8.7.2, City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. 7.2, Larson Grove, Phase 3, Stage 1C, Land Use Bylaw 5/2016 Amendment. I'll ask Anthony Andre to go forward.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council.
Good afternoon, Anthony.
The purpose of the report is to recommend the Council grant second and third reading to bylaw 27/2019, being a bylaw to amend a part of parcel B, plan number 101-564-377, from R1 single detached residential district to R3 row house residential district. The purpose of the amendment is to accommodate the construction of 16 row house dwelling units as intended by the developer. Bylaw received first reading from Council on October 28, 2019. Since first reading, Schedule A, attached to bylaw number 27/2019, was amended by removing future lot lines to provide clarification. During the 21-day referral period, 28 letters were sent out to adjacent property owners, and 5 responses were received as a result. 4 of the residents expressed concerns about a decrease in property value. 3 respondents expressed concerns of an increase in traffic and on-street parking. 2 respondents stated that a consideration when purchasing their properties was the developer's initial intent to construct single detached homes on the subject lands, and 1 respondent expressed a concern about the lack of nearby playground. Administration responded to these concerns, stating that the city generally experiences an increase in property values of adjacent neighborhoods or adjacent properties where development is occurring in the neighborhood, and that the increase from 10 dwelling units to 16 dwelling units is not likely to increase in a significant amount of traffic. To provide additional information, respondents were invited to meet with administration and the developer on November 5th, 2019. 4 adjacent property owners attended the meeting. The main topic of discussion was the potential impact to property values.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. I apologize. I wrote down Larson Grove because, and I'll explain to you what happened here. I talked to the developer and asked him about it because as you recall, we just received an artist conception of this project. And there was concerns from people in the R1 district. And he took me and showed me those existing buildings that exist in Larson Grove. So I wrote down Larson Grove, so I apologize for that. But if you want to look at them, they're more than welcome to show you what they look like. Because they have about 8 of them backed out on the north side of Borrego. I don't know what the lake number is, but they're there. And they're quite nice, and I think they'll fit in quite well on that project. The one issue that I had, not just on this project, on any project, we have services to all those units, like I don't know how many, obviously there must be 6. And they're gonna have to disconnect them out in the street. And it's inevitably, when we disconnect the service or dig up a service, when we're done, we get a bad swale in the street. There's lots of them in the city. And I don't know how we stop that issue. Because when they're packing them, they use a plate tamper this wide, and so I don't know what goes on, but traditionally we get streets that don't really pan out too well after they're patched. And or if we don't use a proper paver, we end up with a bit of a spotchy job. This is a brand new subdivision. And I think somehow a condition needs to be involved that we can span that space and make sure it doesn't settle all the time. Because these dips in the road and brand new pavement bother me when we pay the kind of money we pay for pavement, or the developer pays for pavement. So I hope they take extra caution with those, because there'll be 6, apparently 6.
I think 6 digs. But
No, I have another question. At one time, with duplexes, you had to have a separate service for each unit. Does that not exist anymore?
Yeah, I just walked back here to talk to Director of Planning and Engineering, so any corrections there, you feel free to join us. So my understanding with regards to the services is we're permitting 2 services per building, which would essentially have 2 services that are in excess of what's required to service this property. So those 2 services would be the responsibility of the developer to go back and abandon that at the mains. So that would include removal of asphalt, excavating down to the main, removing the service and capping it appropriately, which is our standard through the municipal development standards. My understanding is engineering and planning has worked with the developer, and that this servicing agreement is agreeable by both parties.
So as I look at the drawing, I hear Council make it very clearly, because I hate digging up new asphalt as well. We've had that conversation around this table before. We've even handled a few questions from grade 9 students at ES Laird wondering why we have to go back and do a second time. So we're very familiar with it. If I see the aerial photo, I could be wrong, but some of them shouldn't have a problem because it hasn't been paved yet, correct? It's only a portion that
It's all been paid.
it's all been paved. Okay, so we do that.
Unfortunately, in these circumstances, when you do have extra services, it's not in a situation abandoned services either, because they do cause us trouble down the road. So that's why it's in our municipal development standard. In saying that, I think we did a lot of work with the developer to have the least amount of impact on those services from what was existing to what they're proposing with this development.
Terry, please.
Just want to provide a little more update on that one. Basically, 100% aligned with what Executive Manager John Sang brought forward. But that North Road and the West Road, they haven't had final lift of asphalt on them, and we're looking to make sure that those dig ups hopefully are going to be more on that one than the final one on the 42nd Avenue. So again, we're working quite closely with the developer on this one to minimize the impact as much as possible. Yes.
Appreciate that.
The other thing, when they're bringing the laterals in, this is a developer thing. but do they bring the laterals in on the earth, you know, on through the lawn, or do they bring them in under the driveway? Because the driveways and garages take up 2/3 of the lot, or it looks like it. But that's the development problem, I guess. But
So there would be a
if you
developer.
had to dig them up, it'd be a real problem.
Yeah, I think the developer would have to take that into
I'm sure they'll
consideration.
take that into consideration. Themselves looks good, and if you need to know about them, I'll put you in touch with whoever. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilor
I
Beck.
guess, Your Worship, the only thing I could do in the future, this is a great presentation. It's easy to find, and you can follow it through, and in the future, ask the builders to prevent something like this so we can understand, rather than just an artist's conception of something. It just tell them to do it, and I'm sure they'll do it, because it sure saves a lot of time. If you get the first-hand information up front, that'd be great if you could do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Councilor Beck.
Yeah, you know, taking a look at the area going down there, there's kind of a mixed bag of, there's R3 there already, there's another apartment building further down. I'm not one for going in and changing, you know, rezoning things, but when I take a look at this, there's really 5 houses that are currently facing an already R3 parcel, and the other is going to be R3. So those people could be affected somewhat, but the rest of the block there is no houses in front, so it's all empty. So anybody who has 20 lots or whatever it is will be well aware of what the situation is going to be. So considering that it's got the mixed bag, you know, I have no problem going forward with the project. I think it's a great idea. I can't see any improvement, you know, as far as parking goes. There's bad parking that's already just down the block, but with having their own lot as well as a garage, or sorry, a parking spot, a garage space as well as a slab in front. Every unit has enough for 2 vehicles, so I think that I don't see that being a problem.
Any other questions or comments? No, we did go through the public hearing, and as you can see, that no one spoke against it. I appreciate having Anthony bring forward a report about concern from the taxation or devaluing the properties, but based on what I've seen as well, I think it's going to be a very respectable neighborhood. It'll be a little different from your individual homes, but you're going to also have different people living there, and that's the kind of home that they're looking for, and they'll certainly take advantage of it. I think that overall it'll finish that neighborhood very nicely, or complement, not necessarily finishing it, but add value to the neighborhood from that perspective. Councilor,
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, it's a tricky thing in terms of wanting to make sure that, you know, individuals are value that they believe exists on those, but also wanting to have the flexibility to after that. We're not talking about putting an apartment building in that spot. In terms of the density, it's moving it from R1 to R3, and when you look at the lots, in my view, even from the artist rendering, to me it almost looks like there's going to be more on-street parking in this area than there would be if they were all 10 separate units, because, you know, every house would have likely a 2-car driveway. So now you're talking about driveways for 20 cars rather than in this scenario, there's only driveways for 16 cars. So I honestly think that this likely will be an improvement for a lot of the people around there. Also, you're not necessarily going to run into the scenario where on the side street you've got someone who maybe has RV parking where they're backing into the side, which would take up more on-street parking. So to be honest with you, with the type of space that it is, I can see this as being an improvement for the surrounding houses. And you know, in terms of remaining flexible, I think that this is a good thing to continue on with, and thanks to administration for dealing with the concerns as they came up and meeting with the individuals and giving them the time of day to ensure that their concerns were heard and addressed. So I'll be speaking in favor of this one because I think it seems pretty straightforward. It's something that, you know, we should promote to continue to be a little bit flexible on our development. Not too flexible, but a little flexible. Thank you.
Any other comments? Not seeing any, I'll look for direction on 8.7.2 from council. Council Buckingham.
Move the council grant second reading of bylaw 27-2019, being a bylaw to amend approximately 0.42 hectares or 1.04 acres, part of parcel B, plan number 101564377 in the northeast quarter, section 35, 49, 28, west of the 3rd, on land use map, being part 4 to bylaw 5, 2016 to R3, row house residential district.
Seconder. Council Pagel. Any further discussion before I call for the question? Not seeing any, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Council.
Move the council grant third and final reading of bylaw 27-2019, being a bylaw to amend approximately 0.42 hectares or 1.04 acres, part of parcel B, plan number 101564377 in the northeast quarter, section 35, 49, 28, west of the 3rd meridian, on land use map, being part 4 to bylaw 5, 2016 to R3, row house residential district.
Seconder. Councilor Torson. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you.
Moving on to the agenda, item number 9 is correspondence. Anything that we need to deal with, Council? Our city clerk? Council, city clerk, we'll get that. Number 10, mayor and councilors report. My report for the last month is attached for your reading pleasure. And the public's been another busy month as usual. Things have just rolled on as always, between meetings in various locales and as well as public events. Our city again continues to have picked up a lot of speed in the last month as everybody's back to school and things are happening. Expect one more month and then we'll be into the busy season. I don't have anything to directly report from my report, that's not noted. So, any councillors have any reports or information they'd like to provide? If not, I will move on to any other matters that this council needs to deal with at this time. Not seeing any, I will look for inquiries from the media.
Thank you, Worship. Media members are asked to speak with yourself, Mayor Elders, Councillor Torson, Councillor Diachuk, and Councillor Monroe. Thank you.
I'll look for a motion to recess.
Motion to recess.
Councillor Diachuk, seconded by Councillor Buckingham. All in favor? Carried.